To understand the rise of Harappa, one of the earliest great urban civilizations of the ancient world, we must begin long before its famous cities took shape. The story starts thousands of years earlier, in a landscape shaped by rivers, shifting climates, and small communities learning how to survive and eventually thrive on the floodplains of what would later become the Indus Valley. This is a world without cities, without writing, and without the complex social systems that would one day define the Harappan world. But it is also a world full of potential. The foundations for the civilization to come were already being laid by people who never knew they were creating the early stages of something far larger than themselves. The region that would nurture the Harappan civilization stretches across what is now Pakistan, Western India, and parts of Afghanistan. In deep prehistory, this landscape was shaped by two major river systems, the Indus and the Ghaggar-Hakra, the latter often associated with the ancient Sarasvati described in early South Asian traditions. These rivers carved out vast plains, depositing fertile soil ideal for farming. Long before urban life emerged, these river valleys acted like magnets, drawing small groups of people who sought reliable water and land suitable for cultivation. Archaeological evidence shows that some of the earliest farming communities in South Asia began to take shape around the 6th millennium BCE in a place called Mehrgarh, located near the Bolan Pass in present-day Balochistan. Mehrgarh is one of the oldest known agricultural settlements in the region, and it provides essential clues about how human societies transformed from scattered groups of foragers into settled villagers. The people of Mehrgarh cultivated wheat and barley, herded cattle, sheep and goats, and gradually learned to make pottery and craft beads. While the residents of Mehrgarh were not Harappans, their innovations formed important cultural and technological roots from which later developments would grow. The shift from nomadic life to settled farming was not a sudden event. It unfolded over many generations, driven by a combination of environmental opportunity and gradual learning. As early farmers discovered how to cultivate crops and manage herds, they could produce more stable food supplies. This stability allowed communities to grow in size and permanence. Villages began to appear along riverbanks and foothills, each shaped by the environment around it. Some households stored grain in simple mud brick structures, while others developed early forms of craft production, including bead making from materials such as shell and stone. By the 5th and 4th millennia BCE, these early communities expanded across a wider region, from the fertile plains of the Indus River to the drier zones of present-day Rajasthan and Haryana. Archaeologists identify several early cultural phases in this period, such as the Ravi culture near present-day Harappa and the Hakra culture along the Ghaggar-Hakra river system. Each of these cultural groups left behind pottery styles, settlement patterns, and small technological advances that show both shared traditions and local developments. Together, these early groups form the mosaic of cultures that would eventually merge into what we today call the Indus Valley civilization. Climate played an important role in shaping how these early societies evolved. During much of the early Holocene period, the broader region enjoyed relatively stable rainfall influenced by monsoon patterns. Rivers were more active than they would be in later centuries, and their seasonal floods replenished the soil, supporting agriculture. This environmental stability provided a reliable backdrop for communities to invest in long-term settlement building. Yet, even with such advantages, life in these early villages required constant adaptation. Floods could destroy houses, droughts could threaten crops, and changing river courses could force entire communities to relocate. While the archaeological record rarely preserves the voices of individuals, the artifacts left behind hint at human experiences that resonate across millennia. A simple terracotta figurine speaks of early artistic expression. A polished stone blade reflects careful craftsmanship, A cluster of hearths reveals repeated moments of cooking, gathering, and daily life. These objects, though silent, remind us that the people of this era were not just prototypes of a future civilization. They were full human communities responding to their environment with creativity and resilience. As settlements grew in size and complexity, new forms of social cooperation emerged. Managing fields, sharing irrigation efforts, and protecting supplies required coordination. Such cooperation may have encouraged the rise of informal leaders or councils, though no clear evidence of formal hierarchies exists from this early stage. Craft specialists began to appear, producing specific goods like pottery, beads, or stone tools in greater quantities. These items sometimes traveled between regions, suggesting early networks of exchange. Even before cities, people were already interacting across long distances, sharing materials and ideas. One of the most striking early developments was the slow but steady improvement in building techniques. People began using mud bricks in standardized shapes, a practice that would later become a hallmark of Harappan architecture. They also improved food storage methods, allowing them to manage seasonal surpluses. In some regions, such as the Côte-d'Ivoire culture that emerged in the 4th millennium BCE, settlements became larger and sometimes fortified. The presence of fortifications may indicate growing competition among communities or simply a desire for protection against floods or wildlife. Whatever the reason, these fortified settlements reveal increasing social organization and the capacity to mobilize collective labor. Another key development during this early period was the diversification of agricultural practices. Farmers experimented with different crops suited to their local conditions. In some areas, they relied heavily on barley and wheat, crops originally domesticated in Western Asia, but adopted and adapted by local populations. In other regions, people cultivated millets and other dryland crops that required less water. This agricultural diversity strengthened the resilience of these communities, allowing them to occupy both fertile plains and more challenging environments. While many aspects of this early era remain mysterious, what is clear from archaeological discoveries is that cultural innovation was steadily accelerating. By the late 4th millennium BCE, the region hosted a wide network of interconnected settlements. Pottery styles began to show increasing uniformity across long distances, hinting at shared cultural practices or growing trade bonds. Some settlements developed specialized industrial areas, such as areas for pottery firing or craft production. These features signal the first hints of the organizational abilities that would eventually enable large-scale urban development. The Indus River itself served as the lifeline of this emerging civilization. Snowmelt from the distant Himalayas fed its waters, ensuring predictable flows through most of the year. As early settlers positioned themselves near its banks, they gained access not only to water, but also to vital transportation routes. Boats could move goods and people along the river, linking distant communities. Even small-scale trade would have increased communication between settlements, helping ideas and practices spread more widely. As the prehistoric communities of the Indus region continued to grow and evolve, a remarkable transformation began to unfold. The small farming villages that had taken root during earlier centuries slowly moved toward greater complexity, laying the groundwork for organized towns and early urban centers. This period, often described as the early Harappan phase, marks one of the most important turning points in the formation of the civilization that would later become known for its planned cities, advanced craft industries, and far-reaching networks. To understand how Harappa emerged as a major urban hub, we must look closely at the developments that gradually reshaped village life into something bigger, more coordinated, and increasingly interconnected. By the late 4th millennium BCE, cultural landscapes across the northwestern subcontinent had become more diverse and sophisticated. Archaeologists identify several regional cultures that flourished during this era, including those found at Ravi, Kot Diji, Amri, and sites along the Ghaggar-Hakra river system. Although each region developed its own distinctive pottery designs, settlement layouts, and craft traditions, they all show signs of increasing social organization. This era reveals the first clear steps toward structured town life, where communities began planning their spaces more carefully, constructing sturdier buildings, and investing in craft specialization. One of the key distinguishing features of this phase is the emergence of fortified settlements. The settlement at Kot Diji, for example, located in present-day Sindh, is particularly significant. Here, archaeologists found a strong defensive wall built from carefully shaped mud bricks. Such fortifications indicate that people were beginning to think about protection, order, and control of their surroundings in new ways. Whether these walls were built to defend against rival groups, protect valuable storage areas, or manage livestock, they demonstrate a growing capacity for coordinated labor. Building walls of this scale required planning, leadership, and the ability to mobilize large groups of people, all qualities that hint at evolving social structures. These early fortified sites also reveal evolving settlement planning. Houses were no longer arranged in random clusters. Instead, they formed more organized patterns with designated pathways and open spaces. With larger populations came the need to coordinate activities, manage shared resources, and plan for future growth. Villages were gradually becoming proto-towns, and this shift set the stage for the more precise grid layouts that would dominate later Harappan cities. Equally important during this period was the rapid development of craft industries. While earlier communities had produced pottery, stone tools, and beads in small quantities, the early Harappan phase saw a marked increase in the scale and complexity of these crafts. Specialized workshops began to emerge within settlements, dedicated to producing specific goods. At sites such as Raymondari and Kalibangan, archaeologists have discovered areas that appear to have been used exclusively for pottery production, complete with kilns and large quantities of discarded ceramics. Bead-making also expanded during this era, with artisans crafting beads from stones such as carnelian, agate, and steatite. The skill required to produce finely drilled beads suggests that techniques were becoming more refined and that certain individuals or groups may have begun to specialize in this craft. As these goods circulated between settlements, they helped strengthen regional connections. Over time, these networks of exchange would grow into the extensive trade routes that later characterized the mature Harappan economy. Another factor driving social transformation was the increasing complexity of agriculture. While earlier communities had relied on small-scale farming, the early Harappan phase saw more systematic cultivation. People began using more effective tools and experimenting with diverse crop combinations suited to different ecological zones. Irrigation methods, though still simple, became more organized, allowing farmers to support larger populations. Surplus food production, in turn, freed some people from agricultural work, enabling them to pursue specialized crafts or engage in local administration. As settlements expanded, so did the need for storage. Large, well-constructed storage facilities began to appear in some proto-cities. These structures were designed to hold grain or other agricultural products, indicating a greater level of community coordination. Whether managed by local leaders, councils, or other forms of authority, these storage systems suggest mechanisms of resource control that would later become essential to sustaining major urban centers. Another significant development of this era is the gradual standardization of tools and materials. In earlier periods, different communities produced pottery or bricks in a variety of shapes and sizes. But during the early Harappan phase, a noticeable shift toward uniformity appears. Bricks began to follow more regular proportions, and pottery styles showed increasing consistency across distant settlements. This standardization hints at shared cultural values or even coordinated production systems. Such practices would eventually evolve into the highly standardized materials associated with the mature Harappan cities. One of the most intriguing aspects of this period is the emergence of symbols and marks that appear on pottery, seals, and other objects. While these early signs are not the fully developed script seen later, they represent initial steps towards symbolic communication. At some sites, simple geometric symbols appear regularly, possibly indicating ownership, clan identity, or administrative use. These early markings show that communities were beginning to use visual symbols in more formal ways, setting the stage for the later development of the Indus script. The spread of settlements during this era also played a crucial role in shaping the early Harappan world. Sites appeared across a vast geography, from the northern plains of Punjab to the deserts of Rajasthan and the coastal regions of Gujarat. This broad distribution reflects both population growth and the desire to exploit diverse ecological regions. Different environments offered different resources: clay for pottery, stone for tools, fertile land for farming, and coastal access for fishing or trade. As communities interacted with one another, ideas and techniques spread across regions, creating a shared cultural fabric that would eventually unify these settlements into a larger civilization. This growing interconnectedness also influenced social structures. While definitive evidence of political systems from this period remains limited, the increased complexity of settlements suggests that leadership roles were becoming more formalized. Elders, clan heads, or emerging elites may have played key roles in coordinating labor, managing resources, and resolving disputes. Certain families or lineages might have gained higher status through control of trade, craft production, or religious responsibilities. These early forms of hierarchy were subtle but crucial in preparing societies for the administrative needs of urban life. Religious and ritual practices also appear to have evolved during this time. Archaeological findings reveal small, deliberate arrangements of hearths, platforms, or offering spaces within settlements. These features suggest that ritual activities were becoming more structured, though still modest compared to later developments. Such practices likely helped bind communities together, reinforce social norms, and create shared identities across growing populations. As settlements became more complex, so too did their relationships with neighboring regions. Communities along the Indus and Ghaggar-Hakra rivers engaged in exchanges with cultures further west, including those on the Iranian plateau. Goods such as pottery styles, metals, and decorative objects reveal cross-cultural influences. These interactions did not simply bring new materials. They also introduced new ideas and technologies that accelerated local innovation. One of the most important aspects of this era is the gradual shift toward urban thinking. Even though true cities had not yet emerged, many settlements began exhibiting characteristics associated with early urbanism. These include population growth, increased craft specialization, more formal architecture, and larger public spaces. The logic of organizing space, managing resources, and coordinating collective labor became more refined. Over several centuries, this accumulating knowledge and experience created the conditions necessary for the later rise of full-fledged cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. A site that illustrates this transition particularly well is Harappa itself. While Harappa would later become one of the major urban centers of the mature Harappan civilization, its roots stretch back to the early Harappan period. Evidence from the Ravi culture, found beneath later layers at Harappa, shows a settlement with emerging craft industries, storage features, and signs of growing complexity. This early community did not yet resemble the grand city it would one day become, but it already displayed many of the building blocks that would support future urban development. Similarly, Sites along the Ghaggar-Hakra River, such as Kalibangan, show clear steps toward town planning. Organized streets, designated craft areas, and standardized building practices indicate that communities were thinking about how to shape their environment more consciously. These settlements were no longer simply reacting to their surroundings. They were actively engineering them. As the early Harappan world matured, a remarkable transformation began to reshape the landscape of the Indus region. What had once been clusters of organized villages and fortified proto-towns now expanded into some of the earliest fully planned cities in human history. This shift marked a decisive turning point: the rise of true urbanism. It was during this phase, often called the mature Harappan period, that the settlements at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro emerged as large, sophisticated urban centers, each reflecting a new level of coordination, resource management, and architectural vision. This urban revolution did not happen overnight. It was the result of centuries of accumulated knowledge, lessons learned from building fortified settlements, organizing agricultural surplus, producing specialized crafts, and connecting distant communities through trade networks. By the early 3rd millennium BCE, these achievements converged, allowing certain settlements to grow far beyond their earlier boundaries. Harappa, which had long been an important regional hub, expanded dramatically. Mohenjo-daro, located further south near the Indus River, rose as a major new center with a layout that would astonish future archaeologists with its complexity and scale. One of the defining characteristics of this era was the deliberate planning of urban space. Cities were no longer organic clusters of houses built around natural terrain features. Instead, they were carefully laid out, often following a grid-like pattern. Straight streets intersected at right angles, dividing the city into blocks that served different functions. This kind of geometric planning required remarkable foresight and organization. It suggests that city builders were working from a shared vision, possibly guided by established planning traditions or coordinated local authorities. The use of standardized bricks was another striking aspect of these emerging cities. Builders crafted bricks in uniform proportions, ensuring stability and structural consistency across vast settlements. These bricks were used to construct homes, administrative buildings, workshops, and elaborate drainage systems. The widespread adoption of consistent brick dimensions across many sites hints at cultural cohesion, shared engineering knowledge, and perhaps a system of training that ensured builders worked to the same specifications. Such uniformity was not simply a technical choice. It reflected a collective social agreement about how cities should be built. Mohenjo-daro provides one of the clearest examples of this new urban order. Excavations there have revealed broad streets lined with multi-roomed houses, each built around central courtyards. These houses were not identical, but they followed common design principles that emphasized privacy, ventilation, and access to water. Many homes contained their own wells, bathing areas, and drainage systems. This attention to personal and neighborhood hygiene was unparalleled in many other ancient civilizations of the same era. It reveals a cultural emphasis on cleanliness, water management, and the well-being of residents. Harappa, too, exhibited these advanced planning features. Situated along an important branch of the Indus system, the settlement expanded into a complex urban space with multiple mounds, each serving distinct functions. Some areas were residential, while others housed workshops or central structures used for storage or administration. The organization of Harappa suggests a level of civic coordination that would have required leadership capable of managing labor, planning public works, and overseeing the distribution of resources. Water management stood at the heart of these urban innovations. Both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro developed sophisticated drainage systems that reveal careful engineering. Covered drains ran along major streets, with household wastewater flowing into them through chutes and terracotta pipes. These drains were regularly spaced with inspection holes and outlets that made maintenance easier. For an ancient civilization, such meticulous infrastructure indicates a profound understanding of urban sanitation. It also reflects a shared responsibility among residents to maintain the cleanliness of their environment. Public wells and reservoirs further highlight the importance of water. Many neighborhoods had large, shared wells that served as communal gathering points. At Mohenjo-daro, evidence of large stepped wells and water tanks suggests the presence of public spaces where people could bathe, draw water, or perform activities connected to daily hygiene or ritual practice. These features show that cities were designed not only for efficiency, but also for accommodating communal life. One of the most iconic structures of the Indus urban revolution is the large, rectangular water tank, often called the Great Bath, at Mohenjo-daro. While not a palace or temple in the traditional sense, this structure required considerable engineering skill. With its baked brick walls sealed by layers of bitumen to make them waterproof. The purpose of the bath is still debated, but its presence indicates that assembling large workforces to build monumental public structures was now part of urban life. Whatever activities took place there, ritual bathing, community gatherings, or something else entirely, the structure reflects social cohesion and shared cultural values. Alongside these architectural developments, the economies of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro expanded rapidly. Specialization deepened as craftsmen produced goods at unprecedented scale. Workshops for beadmaking, pottery, metalwork, and shell crafting became integral parts of the urban landscape. Artisans fashioned exquisite carnelian beads, finely polished stone tools, figurines, metal objects, and painted ceramics. Their work not only served local needs, but also contributed to long-distance trade networks that linked the Indus region with distant lands such as Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf. These trade networks introduced new materials, techniques, and cultural contacts. Merchants from the Indus region may have traveled along desert routes toward Central Asia or sailed along the coast toward Oman and beyond. Archaeologists have found Indus-style seals and beads in faraway locations, showing that the influence of this emerging civilization extended well beyond its home territory. This economic expansion strengthened the power of cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, making them major hubs through which goods, ideas, and people flowed. The growth of urban centers also required new forms of social coordination. Although the Harappan civilization does not provide clear evidence of kings, rulers, or monumental palaces, the scale of construction and organization points to some form of leadership capable of mobilizing large labor forces. Whether governed by councils, merchant groups, priestly leaders, or other administrative bodies, these cities operated under a coherent system that maintained order and uniform standards across vast regions. The absence of obvious royal monuments may suggest that power was exercised more collectively, or through institutions rather than through individual rulers. Another hallmark of this urban revolution was the development of increasingly complex symbols and writing-like signs. During the early Harappan era, simple marks and geometric shapes had appeared on pottery and other objects. But by the time Harappa and Mohenjo-daro reached full urban scale, these markings evolved into the Indus script. Though undeciphered today, the script appears on seals, tablets, tools, and a range of household items. These inscriptions likely served administrative or economic functions, possibly identifying ownership, recording transactions, or marking goods for trade. Whatever their specific purpose, the presence of script shows that cities needed more sophisticated methods of organization and communication. Alongside advances in writing and administration, social life in these cities began to show signs of hierarchy. While the Indus civilization lacks the dramatic displays of inequality seen in other Bronze Age cultures, such as massive elite tombs or monumental palaces, Subtle distinctions appear in house sizes, artifact quality, and neighborhood layouts. Some houses were large, with private wells and multiple rooms, while others were simpler and more modest. These differences suggest a society where status existed but did not revolve around overt displays of power. The overall absence of lavish royal structures also hints at a cultural preference for civic order over monumental self-expression. Instead of towering statues or vast palaces, the Indus cities invested heavily in infrastructure, drainage, water supply, standardized building materials, and organized streets. These choices suggest a society focused more on collective well-being than on glorifying individual leaders. Environmental considerations also shaped urban development. The Indus and its tributaries provided predictable water supplies, and fertile floodplains supported agriculture on a scale large enough to sustain growing populations. Cities were strategically located near rivers, trade routes, or resource-rich regions. Harappa, for example, sat at a crossroads linking northern highlands with the plains, while Mohenjo-daro occupied an important position along the lower Indus. These strategic locations allowed cities to thrive as commercial, administrative, and cultural centers within a larger regional system. By the time Harappa and Mohenjo-daro entered their fully developed phases, the Indus region had transformed into a vast and interconnected civilization, unlike any other in the ancient world. This was the mature Harappan period, a time when urban centers flourished across an enormous expanse, stretching from the highlands near the Iranian plateau to the coastal regions of Gujarat, and from the plains of Punjab to the desert margins of Rajasthan. It was during this era that the Harappan civilization reached its greatest achievements in organization, cultural cohesion, trade, and technological sophistication. The rise of this expansive cultural network marked the moment when the Indus Valley became a major Bronze Age power, standing alongside other great civilizations of the period, such as those of Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. The defining feature of the mature Harappan civilization was its remarkable cultural unity. Despite the vast distances separating its cities and towns, archaeological evidence reveals striking levels of standardization. Whether one examines pottery styles, brick proportions, weights and measures, or crafting techniques, a shared system of values and practices emerges clearly. This cultural uniformity did not erase regional diversity, but it created a recognizable Harappan identity that linked communities across hundreds of kilometers. Such cohesion required not only shared traditions, but also effective communication and exchange. At the heart of this unified world were the great urban centers. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were among the largest, but they were far from alone. Other cities such as Dholavira, Rakhigarhi, Lothal, and Ganariwala each played distinct roles within the broader civilization. These cities developed advanced layouts with designated residential, administrative, and industrial zones. They exhibited consistent architectural principles, emphasizing order, functionality, and access to essential resources like water. The shared emphasis on civic planning across so many sites suggests the presence of a strong cultural or administrative system guiding these developments. One of the most impressive elements of the mature Harappan age was the deepening of long-distance trade. Although earlier settlements had engaged in exchange networks, the mature Harappan period saw these networks reach new levels of sophistication. Harappan merchants traded goods such as carnelian beads, shell ornaments, cotton textiles, metal tools, and luxury items. Their influence extended across the Arabian Sea to Oman and the Persian Gulf, and northward to Central Asia. Even in distant Mesopotamia, cuneiform texts refer to a place called Meluha, which many scholars associate with the Indus region. The movement of goods across such distances was possible because of carefully organized production centers within Harappan cities. Artisans worked in specialized workshops, creating finely crafted items with a level of skill that astonishes researchers today. Bead making, in particular, reached extraordinary heights. Craftsmen produced long, slender carnelian beads with incredible precision, using drilling techniques that required both expertise and specialized tools. These beads became highly valued items in foreign markets, serving as evidence of the Harappans' mastery of their craft. Metalwork also advanced significantly during this era. Although the Indus people did not leave behind large quantities of monumental metal objects like those found in Egypt or Mesopotamia, they produced finely made tools, weapons, and ornaments. Copper and bronze were the primary metals used, and craftsmen fashioned items ranging from small blades to intricate figurines. The ability to work with metal contributed to the stability and efficiency of urban life, as metal tools improved agricultural productivity, construction, and craft production. Another central feature of the mature Harappan civilization was its sophisticated system of weights and measures. Archaeologists have discovered sets of standardized stone weights at multiple sites, indicating a shared measurement system used for trade, taxation, or resource distribution. The consistent ratios found across distant cities suggest a high degree of coordination and communication between regions. This uniformity allowed merchants to conduct trade with confidence and ensured fairness in transactions across a broad geographical area. The presence of seals further reflects the administrative sophistication of the mature Harappans. Crafted from steatite and often engraved with animal motifs and script signs, seals served as markers of identity or ownership. They were used in trade, possibly to stamp packaging materials or clay tags attached to goods. Each seal combined symbolic imagery with text, suggesting that the Harappans had developed a system of visual communication well suited to managing an expansive economy. Although the Indus script remains undeciphered, the widespread distribution of seals shows that literacy, or at least familiarity with symbolic notation, played a role in the civilization's administrative practices. Beyond economic life, the cultural world of the mature Harappans reflected a shared set of values related to order, ritual, and everyday living. Across many cities, archaeologists have found small terracotta figurines representing humans, animals, or symbolic motifs. Some figurines may have been used in household rituals or as teaching tools for children. Others seem connected to beliefs about fertility, protection, or community identity. Although their precise meanings remain uncertain, these figurines provide insight into the symbolic and emotional world of Harappan households. Another window into Harappan culture comes from their approaches to burial and mortuary practices. Unlike some ancient civilizations known for grand tombs and elaborate funerary rituals, the Harappans practiced more modest forms of burial. Cemeteries located outside city limits contained simple interments, sometimes accompanied by pottery or personal ornaments. The absence of dramatic burial differences suggests that social hierarchy existed but was not expressed through extravagant funerary displays. Instead, the emphasis on order and uniformity found in cities also extended to the realm of death. Agriculture remained the foundation of Harappan life during this period, but it reached greater levels of organization and productivity. Farmers cultivated crops suited to different ecological zones, including wheat, barley, pulses, rice in some eastern regions, and cotton in the western part of the civilization. Cotton production is particularly significant, as the Harappans are among the earliest people known to weave cotton textiles. These textiles likely became an important trade commodity and contributed to the civilization's economic strength. Agricultural prosperity supported large populations in cities, which in turn fueled craft specialization, trade expansion, and administrative complexity. The interconnectedness of these systems demonstrates the mature sophistication of Harappan society. A farmer harvesting barley was not just feeding a family. They were supporting potters, metalworkers, merchants, and builders whose work sustained the entire civilization. This interdependence created a resilient social structure capable of maintaining stability across vast distances. Religion and ritual during the mature Harappan period also took on new forms. While earlier communities had modest ritual sites, the urban Harappans developed more formal spaces that may have served ritual functions. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro stands out as one of the most striking examples. Although its specific purpose remains unclear, its careful construction, watertight design, and central placement suggest that it played a significant role in community life. Whether used for ritual cleansing, public gatherings, or ceremonial events, the structure represents the integration of architecture and communal identity. Across cities, raised platforms, fire altars, and open courtyards likely served as additional ritual or ceremonial spaces. Yet, the Harappans did not construct large temples or shrines dominated by priestly elites. Instead, ritual life seems to have been integrated into domestic and public settings in more subtle ways. This approach to spirituality mirrors the civilization's overall emphasis on balance, order, and collective well-being. Social organization during the mature Harappan period remains one of the most intriguing aspects of the civilization. Even with large populations and complex cities, the Harappans did not produce obvious monuments to rulers or centralized authority. Instead, power appears to have been distributed through local leaders, councils, or administrative bodies. The evidence suggests a model of governance that prioritized cooperation and community needs over individual displays of wealth or authority. This system, though still not fully understood, may have contributed to the stability and durability of Harappan cities. As the mature Harappan civilization reached its height, the cities of the Indus world revealed a distinctive character shaped by careful planning, meticulous engineering, and an unwavering commitment to civic order. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, and many other centers displayed a level of urban organization that set them apart from most other Bronze Age societies. To understand the achievements of this civilization, we must step inside its cities, not just to admire their infrastructure, but to understand how daily life unfolded within their carefully designed environments. This was a world shaped by brick, water, and an extraordinary culture of planning. One of the most striking features of Harappan cities was their layout. While earlier settlements had grown gradually and often irregularly, mature Harappan cities were deliberately designed. Streets followed clear alignments, often running straight for long distances before intersecting at right angles. These intersections created blocks that could be easily divided into residential, industrial, and administrative areas. Such planning did not happen by accident. It required vision, authority, and a shared understanding among builders and citizens about how a city should be organized. When people entered a Harappan city, they were stepping into an environment shaped by collective decision-making and long-established design principles. Within this structured layout, homes reflected both practicality and comfort. Most Harappan houses were built around central courtyards. These open-air spaces allowed sunlight and fresh air to enter, while also creating private areas for cooking, gathering, and performing daily tasks. The courtyard design helped regulate temperature, making homes cooler in hot seasons and more comfortable overall. This arrangement also facilitated social life, as families could interact in shared spaces without exposing their activities to the street. Residential areas varied in size and complexity, but even modest homes demonstrated thoughtful design. Many had multiple rooms, built-in storage areas, and raised platforms used for sleeping or working. Some houses included enclosed bathing spaces equipped with drainage channels that carried wastewater away. These features reveal a deep cultural emphasis on hygiene and personal care. Rather than viewing sanitation as a mere necessity, the Harappans integrated it into the core design of their homes and cities. The drainage systems themselves stand among the most impressive engineering achievements of the civilization. Harappan cities developed interconnected networks of covered drains running along major streets and alleys. These drains were constructed with precision, using standardized bricks to create channels that could carry water efficiently. Some drains included settling chambers that allowed heavier materials to collect before wastewater continued its journey, reducing blockages and making maintenance easier. This level of engineering was exceptional for the ancient world and demonstrates the Harappans' advanced understanding of urban sanitation. Beyond individual houses, public wells played a central role in daily life. Many neighborhoods had their own large wells, serving as shared sources of water for drinking, cooking, washing, and household tasks. The presence of so many wells indicates that residents valued easy access to water and were willing to invest in shared infrastructure. These wells often became informal gathering spots where neighbors exchanged news, discussed daily affairs, and participated in the social rhythms that shaped community life. Some cities, particularly Mohenjo-daro and Dholavira, also developed larger water systems that went beyond the everyday needs of households. Reservoirs and storage tanks collected rainwater or redirected river flows, ensuring a steady supply throughout the year. Dholavira is especially renowned for its sophisticated water management system, which used channels, dams, and large stone reservoirs to capture scarce rainfall. This system reflects a deep understanding of local environments and a willingness to embrace complex engineering solutions. The Harappans were not merely responding to their environment, they were shaping it. Daily life in Harappan cities was supported by a range of occupations. Artisans worked in specialized workshop areas, producing pottery, beads, metal tools, shell objects, and other goods. Many workshops were located near sources of raw materials or close to trade routes passing through the city. The organization of workshop districts ensured that noise, smoke, and debris were kept away from residential areas, demonstrating an early form of zoning. This separation of functions allowed cities to run smoothly while supporting diverse economic activities. Markets were another vital aspect of urban life. Though large marketplace structures have not been clearly identified, the layout of cities suggests that commercial activities took place along major streets and in open, central areas. Traders and merchants likely set up temporary stalls or used small shops built into the fronts of houses. These markets would have been lively spaces filled with the sounds of bargaining, the movement of goods, and conversations among residents and visitors. Goods circulating through these markets connected urban households with rural producers and long-distance traders, knitting together the economic fabric of the civilization. Harappan cities also contained larger public or administrative buildings that served broader community needs. At Harappa, for example, certain elevated areas appear to have been used for communal storage or public gatherings. While earlier generations of archaeologists referred to some of these buildings as granaries, ongoing research suggests they may have had multiple uses, including warehousing goods, collecting tribute, or hosting administrative activities. Regardless of function, their scale and central placement indicate their importance to urban life and community organization. Social interaction in Harappan cities followed patterns shaped by urban design. Streets acted as both transport routes and social corridors. People walked from home to workshops, from wells to markets, and from industrial areas to public buildings. In doing so, they encountered neighbors, traders, and travelers, creating a constant flow of communication and exchange. This everyday movement strengthened community ties and ensured that residents remained connected to the larger social and economic networks of the city. Despite the complexity of urban life, Harappan cities also fostered familiar moments of domestic routine. Families cooked meals in clay hearths, ground grain with stone tools, and prepared dairy products from cattle, sheep, or goats. Children played in courtyards and open spaces, learning the skills and habits that would shape their adult lives. In the evenings, households gathered around small lamps, made from terracotta, to share stories or perform simple rituals. These intimate moments remind us that beneath the impressive architecture and planning, Harappan cities were lived-in spaces shaped by human experience. One of the most intriguing aspects of Harappan urban life is how seamlessly it integrated order with flexibility. While cities followed standardized layouts, they also adapted to local needs and landscapes. For example, Mohenjo-daro featured elevated areas that may have protected certain districts from seasonal flooding. In contrast, desert-edge cities like Kalibangan embraced different construction methods suited to drier conditions. This adaptability allowed the civilization to thrive across diverse environments without sacrificing its core identity. The Harappans' approach to civic order extended to their material culture as well. Standardized pottery shapes, consistent weight systems, and uniform seal designs all reflect a deep cultural emphasis on regularity and precision. Even mundane objects such as storage jars, terracotta figurines, and house bricks followed established patterns. This cultural consistency helped unify the civilization and facilitated communication across great distances. It also contributed to the smooth functioning of daily life, as residents understood how to navigate their environments and interact within a shared social framework. To understand how the great cities of the Harappan world sustained themselves, we must step beyond their walls and into the vast rural landscapes that fed, supplied, and economically grounded the civilization. While cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro dazzled with their planning and infrastructure, it was the agricultural system and the people who worked the land that formed the backbone of this Bronze Age society. The Harappan economy thrived because it successfully connected rural production, storage networks, and urban demand into a balanced and efficient system. In this section, we explore how fields, farms, herds, and food shaped the economic foundations of one of the world's earliest urban civilizations. The Harappans farmed across a wide ecological range, from the fertile Indus River plains to the semi-arid regions of Gujarat and the dry tracts of Rajasthan. This diversity fostered a flexible agricultural system capable of adapting to different environments. Farmers in the floodplains relied on the rich alluvial soils deposited by seasonal river cycles. These soils retained moisture and nutrients, allowing farmers to cultivate crops with relatively little irrigation. Meanwhile, those living in drier regions developed strategies to capture and store rainwater, or used hardy crops capable of surviving in low water conditions. The agricultural calendar varied across regions, shaped by monsoon rains, river floods, and local soil conditions. In areas near the Indus River, seasonal flooding created a natural cycle of renewal, replenishing farmland and making it easier for farmers to plant new crops without extensive plowing. Further east, communities living along the Ghaggar-Hakra system adopted different rhythms, relying more on rainfall and underground water sources. These adaptations allowed the civilization to support large populations spread across a vast area. The Harappan diet reflected this agricultural variety. Wheat and barley formed the core staples in many regions. These crops could be stored for long periods, making them ideal for supporting both households and urban centers. In areas where rainfall was more abundant, farmers cultivated rice, which appears at some Harappan sites in small quantities. Pulses such as lentils, chickpeas, and peas supplemented diets with protein. Oilseeds also played an important role, with sesame and mustard contributing both nutrition and culinary flavor. The Harappans were among the earliest people to cultivate cotton on a significant scale. Cotton textiles became one of their signature products, valued for comfort in the region's warm climate. Evidence of spindle whorls, loom weights, and impressions of woven cloth shows that textile production grew into a specialized craft. Cotton cultivation required planning and careful water management, suggesting that farmers were skilled in crop rotation and resource allocation. Livestock formed another essential component of the Harappan economy. Cattle played a central role in agriculture, particularly in plowing fields and transporting goods. Bulls may have been used to pull carts, helping move produce from villages to urban markets. Sheep and goats provided meat, milk, and wool, while water buffaloes thrived in wet areas. The presence of animal pens in some settlements indicates that households managed herds close to home, integrating livestock care into daily routines. Pastoralism complemented farming, especially in regions where crops were harder to grow. Herders moved their animals across grazing grounds, helping maintain ecological balance and expanding the range of available resources. This combination of settled farming and mobile herding created a resilient economic system that could withstand environmental fluctuations. The Harappans also gathered and exploited wild resources. Fish and shellfish were important in coastal regions, while freshwater fish supported inland communities living near rivers and lakes. Wild fruits, nuts, and honey supplemented agricultural produce. The variety of available foods reflects a broad and flexible subsistence strategy that enriched diets and supported population growth. Agricultural success depended heavily on the development of effective tools. Harappan farmers used wooden plows, often tipped with stone or copper blades, to loosen soil and prepare fields. Sickle blades made from baked chert allowed efficient harvesting of cereal crops. Grinding stones and querns were essential household tools used for processing grain into flour or meal. Although simple by modern standards, these tools represented centuries of refinement and allowed farmers to cultivate increasingly larger fields. Storage was another crucial element of the Harappan economic system. Surplus grain needed to be preserved safely to ensure stability during dry seasons, crop failures, or unexpected shortages. In both rural settlements and urban centers, archaeologists have found evidence of large storage structures, including elevated platforms and mud brick granaries. These facilities prevented moisture from damaging stored grain and protected food supplies from pests. Storage also reflects an important shift toward economic coordination. Large-scale grain collection suggests that communities may have organized shared reserves used for redistribution, trade, or support during difficult years. Whether managed by local councils, merchant guilds, or administrative officials, storage systems reveal a society capable of planning for the future and managing resources on a substantial scale. Trade routes formed the arteries of the Harappan economy, linking rural producers with urban consumers and connecting cities to distant regions. Farmers and herders supplied food, raw materials, and livestock products to artisans and traders living in towns. In return, they received crafted goods, tools, pottery, and items imported through long-distance exchange networks. This interdependence strengthened social bonds and ensured the smooth functioning of the broader economy. Transport methods varied depending on terrain. On land, carts pulled by oxen or bulls likely carried heavy loads across settlements. Footpaths and early roads connected villages to towns and towns to major cities. Along rivers, simple boats moved goods efficiently. The Indus River, in particular, acted as a natural highway, linking communities spread across hundreds of kilometers. This ability to move goods easily and predictably reinforced economic unity across the civilization. Markets within cities played a central role in economic life. Rural producers might bring surplus grain, dairy products, vegetables, or animal hides to city markets, where they exchanged them for tools, ornaments, or pottery. Markets likely operated on established rhythms, perhaps aligning with agricultural cycles or community gatherings. Although the Harappans did not leave written records explaining their economic systems, the presence of standardized weights suggests that merchants followed widely accepted rules for trade and measurement. Another indirect but valuable insight into the Harappan economy comes from the layout of certain urban buildings. Some large structures with partitioned rooms may have served as warehouses or distribution centers. Goods transported from rural areas could have been sorted, weighed, and redistributed through these facilities. This system would have helped stabilize prices, prevent shortages, and ensure that urban populations remained well supplied. The relationship between rural and urban areas extended beyond economics. Seasonal festivals, marriages, religious observances, and kinship ties created a constant flow of communication between villages and cities. Farmers and herders who visited urban centers not only delivered produce, but also participated in cultural and social activities that strengthened their sense of belonging to a wider civilization. Urban residents, in turn, relied on these rural communities not just for food, but also for maintaining the cultural traditions and labor networks that supported city life. Environmental awareness played a key role in agricultural planning. Harappan farmers understood the rhythms of rivers and monsoons, timing their planting and harvesting accordingly. They recognized which crops performed best under certain conditions and adapted their strategies as needed. For example, in regions where river flooding provided fertile soil each season, farmers might focus on crops that thrived in moist environments. In drier regions, they selected drought-resistant varieties and developed methods to conserve water. As the agricultural foundations of the Harappan world grew stronger and more reliable, the civilization gained the capacity to expand its economic horizons far beyond simple subsistence. The mature Harappan period witnessed the rise of bustling workshops, thriving trade routes, and a flourishing culture of craft specialization that linked cities and distant lands in a vast network of exchange. This section explores how skilled artisans, resourceful traders, and interconnected communities transformed the Indus Valley into one of the ancient world's most dynamic economic regions. The sophistication of Harappan craft production is one of the civilization's most defining features. Across major cities and smaller settlements alike, archaeologists have discovered carefully organized workshop areas dedicated to a variety of crafts. These workshops produced goods not merely for local use, but also for export to other regions within and beyond the Indus world. The expansion of specialized industries shows that the Harappans had moved far beyond simple village-based economies. Instead, they developed complex production systems that required skilled labor, access to raw materials, and strong networks of distribution. One of the most iconic Harappan crafts was bead making. Harappan bead makers worked with a wide range of materials, including carnelian, agate, steatite, shell, copper, and even semi-precious stones sourced from distant regions. These materials arrived in workshops where skilled artisans shaped, drilled, polished, and prepared beads for both domestic and international markets. The famous long carnelian beads produced by Harappan craftsmen demonstrate a level of precision drilling that astonishes modern researchers. These elongated beads required hours of careful shaping and repeated heating and cooling to achieve their signature glossy finish. Workshops specializing in bead production appeared in cities such as Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dholavira, and Lothal. Each workshop displayed evidence of intense activity. Raw stone fragments, drilling tools, furnaces, polishing stones, and unfinished beads. The concentration of such workshops in specific urban areas suggests that certain districts were known for particular crafts. This form of zoning reflects careful urban planning and a deep understanding of how to organize industrial activity efficiently. Another major craft tradition involved shell working. Shells from coastal regions, especially those found along the Makran coast and in the Gulf of Kutch, were transported inland to workshops where artisans shaped them into bangles, pendants, and decorative objects. Shell bangles, in particular, became a hallmark of Harappan ornamentation. Their presence in inland sites demonstrates the extensive trade networks that connected coastal communities with urban centers deep within the subcontinent. Metalwork also reached new levels of refinement during the mature Harappan period. Harappan metalworkers primarily used copper and bronze to craft tools, weapons, vessels, needles, mirrors, and ornamental pieces. While the Indus civilization did not engage in large-scale metal casting comparable to some contemporaneous cultures, it excelled in producing finely crafted, everyday objects. Metalworkers worked in small but specialized workshops, melting copper ingots, shaping tools, and producing utilitarian items that supported agriculture, domestic life, and artisanal production. Pottery production also expanded into a well-organized industry. Harappan pottery is known for its uniform quality, elegant shapes, and distinctive designs. Potters used fast wheels to shape vessels with precision. They decorated pots with black or red motifs, often depicting geometric patterns, fish, birds, or plant forms. Large storage jars, cooking pots, bowls, and drinking cups all followed standardized forms, reflecting shared aesthetic preferences and practical needs. Kilns used for firing pottery were carefully constructed, with multiple chambers to control heat distribution. The presence of these kilns within specific sectors of cities reveals that pottery making, like bead production and metalwork, was concentrated in designated districts. This separation of industrial and residential areas contributed to the overall order and cleanliness of Harappan cities. Beyond crafts, the expansion of trade networks was a defining characteristic of the mature Harappan civilization. Trade operated at multiple levels: local, regional, and long distance. At the local level, nearby villages provided urban centers with food, raw materials, and livestock products, while cities supplied rural communities with finished goods. This symbiotic exchange ensured economic stability and strengthened social ties. Regional trade connected different zones within the sprawling Harappan cultural sphere. The northern region might supply timber or stone, while the western highlands contributed metals or precious stones. The coastal regions offered shells, salt, and fish. Cities served as central hubs where these goods were collected, processed, and redistributed. Long-distance trade extended far beyond the boundaries of the Indus world. Archaeological discoveries show clear evidence of contact with Mesopotamia, Oman, Iran, and Central Asia. Mesopotamian records refer to a distant land called Meluha, widely believed to be the Indus region. These texts mention Meluhan merchants, Meluhan ships, and goods sourced from Meluha, suggesting an active exchange of commodities across the Arabian Sea. Indus goods found in Mesopotamia include carnelian beads, etched steatite beads, shell objects, and possibly cotton textiles. In return, the Harappans may have imported copper from Oman, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and other valuable materials from across the Iranian plateau. Some Harappan seals found in Mesopotamia indicate that merchants used standardized administrative tools even in foreign markets. The presence of specialized port towns along the coastline facilitated this long-distance trade. Lothal, located in modern-day Gujarat, is one of the most important examples. It featured a carefully designed dock-like basin, warehouses, and industrial areas dedicated to bead-making and shell-working. Lothal served as a gateway for maritime trade, connecting inland cities with distant civilizations across the sea. Its strategic position and well-planned facilities demonstrate the Harappans' deep understanding of trade logistics. Trade was not only about goods, it was also about ideas. Contact with distant cultures introduced new artistic styles, technologies, and cultural practices. While the Harappan civilization maintained its distinct identity, it was open to influences from beyond its borders. These interactions enriched Harappan society and helped it adapt to changing economic landscapes. To facilitate both trade and administration, the Harappans developed a sophisticated system of weights and measures. Stone weights, shaped in precise geometric forms, appear at sites across the entire civilization. These weights follow consistent ratios, allowing traders to conduct transactions fairly and reliably. Standardization was essential for long-distance exchange, especially when dealing with foreign merchants unfamiliar with local customs. The Harappan emphasis on precision and fairness strengthened trust between trading partners and ensured smooth economic interactions. Another key element of Harappan trade and administration was the widespread use of seals. These small carved objects served as markers of identity, property, or authority. A seal might represent a merchant, a household, or an administrative office. When pressed into clay, it created a distinct impression that authenticated goods or documents. The symbols and animal motifs on seals carried meaning within Harappan society, though their exact significance remains unknown. Some seals depict the famous unicorn, a stylized animal found nowhere else in ancient iconography, suggesting symbolic or cultural importance. The Harappan script also appears on seals, tablets, and pottery, indicating that writing played a role in economic and administrative activities. Although the script remains undeciphered, its presence on objects connected with trade suggests it may have been used to record transactions, mark ownership, or designate goods for transport. The script's brevity and standardized form point to a practical system suited to the needs of merchants and officials. As the Harappan civilization reached its height, it developed a sophisticated system of visual communication that supported administration, trade, and cultural identity across a vast geographical area. While earlier sections explored the physical, economic, and social foundations of this Bronze Age world, the next layer of complexity appears in the form of seals, inscriptions, and symbolic traditions that remain among the most intriguing aspects of Harappan life. These systems reveal a civilization deeply invested in order, clarity, and shared meaning. Yet their full interpretation remains out of reach, presenting one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of the ancient world. The most iconic artifacts associated with Harappan communication are the carved steatite seals. These small, square or rectangular objects typically feature a central animal motif, a short line of script, and occasionally additional symbols. Hundreds of such seals have been found across the Indus region, and each one offers a glimpse into the administrative and cultural practices that held the civilization together. Although the inscriptions on the seals remain undeciphered, their consistent design across distant cities shows that they played a vital role in maintaining standardized systems of identification. The animals carved on seals hold particular cultural significance. Among the most common is the so-called unicorn, a stylized creature found nowhere else in the archaeological record. Scholars debate whether the unicorn represents a mythical animal, a symbolic emblem associated with a clan or guild, or an artistic convention with deeper cultural meaning. Other animals frequently depicted include bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, ibexes, and tigers. Each motif appears to have been chosen with intention, perhaps reflecting the identity of a household, a profession, a settlement, or an administrative office. Seals were not merely decorative objects. When pressed into soft clay, they produced impressions that could seal containers, mark goods, or authenticate documents. This suggests that seals played a crucial role in regulating trade and administration. A merchant shipping goods from Harappa to another city might affix a seal impression to indicate the origin or ownership of the cargo. An official responsible for collecting taxes or redistributing stored grain might use a seal to validate transactions. Although the details remain uncertain, the widespread distribution of seals across sites large and small points to their importance in everyday economic and bureaucratic life. The script that appears on seals is equally captivating. Composed of short sequences of signs, often fewer than a dozen per inscription, the Harappan script has resisted decipherment despite decades of scholarly effort. Researchers have proposed numerous theories about the language underlying the script, ranging from early Dravidian languages to lost linguistic families or even systems of non-linguistic symbols. Without a bilingual inscription comparable to the famous Rosetta Stone, unlocking the meaning of these signs remains a formidable challenge. However, even without translation, the script provides valuable insights. The consistent shape and order of signs across distant sites show that the Harappans employed a standardized writing system. This indicates that literacy, or at least functional familiarity with script, was integrated into administrative activities. Some inscriptions appear not only on seals, but also on pottery, tools, tablets, weights, and metal objects. This diversity of media suggests that writing served multiple purposes, including marking ownership, labeling goods, or recording quantities. Clay tablets featuring script offer additional clues. These tablets are often small, rectangular, and inscribed on one or both sides. Some show repeated sign patterns, hinting at standardized entries that may have been used for accounting or inventory. In several cases, tablets display numerical-looking sequences, although the civilization's numeric system remains unknown. These artifacts reflect a complex administrative system that relied on written records to support trade, storage, and distribution within cities and across regions. Beyond seals and tablets, the Harappans employed a wide range of symbols in their material culture. Pottery often displays painted motifs such as fish, peepal leaves, birds, or geometric designs. These motifs likely held symbolic significance in ritual or household contexts. Their repetition across cities reflects a shared cultural language that reinforced common identity and assisted in transmitting meaning without words. Terracotta figurines also played a symbolic role in Harappan society. Many figurines depict animals, while others represent human figures with elaborate hairstyles or jewelry. Some figurines appear to have been used in household rituals, serving as offerings or protective symbols. Their precise interpretations remain uncertain, but their widespread presence highlights the importance of symbolic expression in daily life. Large, carved signs found at Dolavira offer another remarkable example of Harappan symbolic communication. These signs, arranged on a massive wooden board displayed above the city's entrance, appear to have conveyed an important public message. Although the script remains undeciphered, the size and placement of the signs indicate that they were meant to be visible to a large audience. This suggests that writing held not only administrative importance, but also public and ceremonial value. Harappan communication also included standardized weights and measures, which acted as symbolic systems in their own right. While not writing in the traditional sense, these systems allowed merchants and officials to communicate quantities and values with precision. A stone weight of a certain shape conveyed an exact measurement, recognized instantly by traders across the civilization. This level of standardization required agreement on shared symbols and the training of individuals to interpret them consistently. The importance of symbolic communication extended into the realm of religion and ritual. Certain motifs, such as the pipal tree, humped bull, or horned figures, appear repeatedly across seals, pottery, and figurines. These motifs may have represented spiritual concepts, clan symbols, or protective emblems. The famous image, sometimes interpreted as a seated figure surrounded by animals, though still debated, hints at a symbolic tradition rooted in nature, fertility, or leadership. One particularly intriguing artifact category includes ritual objects with inscriptions or iconography that appear to have been used in special contexts. These objects may have carried blessings, conveyed authority, or marked significant events. Their symbolic importance remains uncertain, but their presence shows that Harappan society integrated visual communication deeply into spiritual life. The sophistication of Harappan symbols raises important questions about who controlled or used these systems. Did literacy belong only to a specialized class of administrators or scribes? Or was reading and interpreting symbols a more widespread skill among merchants and artisans? The archaeological record does not reveal large libraries or long inscriptions, unlike those found in Mesopotamia or Egypt. Instead, Harappan writing appears concise and functional. This brevity suggests that writing may have served specific administrative or ritual purposes rather than recording long narratives or legal codes. As the Harappan civilization expanded into a vast network of cities, towns, and rural settlements, it required systems of governance capable of supporting dense populations, coordinating large-scale construction, and regulating trade across immense distances. Yet unlike many other Bronze Age civilizations, the Harappans left behind no towering palaces, no lavish royal graves, and no inscriptions praising the deeds of kings. This absence of obvious rulers has led scholars to ask a fascinating question. How did a civilization of such size, stability, and sophistication organize its social and political life without leaving clear evidence of centralized monarchs or dynastic leadership? To explore the political world of the Harappans, we must turn to the clues embedded in their cities, artifacts, and patterns of daily life. These clues reveal a civilization with a distinctive approach to authority, one that emphasizes collective order, shared standards, and subtle forms of hierarchy rather than dramatic displays of personal power. A good starting point is the remarkable uniformity seen across Harappan settlements. Whether one examines the standardized bricks used to build houses, the consistent weights employed in markets, or the uniform layout of city streets, a clear pattern emerges. Harappan society valued regularity and cohesion. Such widespread standardization did not arise spontaneously. It required some form of overarching coordination, whether through a centralized authority, shared cultural norms, or a federation of local elites who agreed on common practices. What makes the Harappan case unique is that this coordination appears to have been achieved without the monumental architecture that typically symbolizes imperial power. Unlike the pharaohs of Egypt or the kings of Mesopotamia, Harappan leaders, if they existed in recognizable political forms, did not commemorate themselves through grand tombs or towering statues. Instead, the built environment highlights civic structures, public works, and communal facilities. The emphasis on urban infrastructure suggests that authority may have been exercised through institutions rather than individuals. Archaeologists sometimes refer to this as a corporate or collective model of governance. Under such a system, power would be shared among groups of leaders, perhaps councils of elders, merchant guilds, influential families, or priestly groups, rather than concentrated in the hands of a single ruler. This type of political organization may have allowed the Harappans to manage resources effectively while maintaining social harmony across their wide-ranging civilization. One piece of evidence supporting the idea of collective governance is the absence of large, ostentatious palaces. Instead, some cities contain moderate-sized buildings that appear administrative rather than personal. These structures often include multiple rooms, raised platforms, or storage areas, indicating that they may have served for meetings, record-keeping, or management of goods. Their functional design reinforces the idea that authority was connected to civic responsibility rather than personal grandeur. Social hierarchy existed within Harappan society, but it manifested subtly. Differences in house size, the quality of artifacts, and the distribution of luxury items reveal gradations in wealth and status. Larger homes with private wells and multiple rooms suggest that influential families or professional groups enjoyed greater resources than typical households. But the differences were not extreme. Even the largest houses lacked the extravagant decoration or specialized architecture associated with elite residences in other ancient cultures. The moderate scale of inequality hints at a social system in which status did not require conspicuous displays of wealth. Instead, respect and influence may have depended on participation in community activities, control over trade networks, religious roles, or specialized skills in administration or craft production. Religious specialists could have been among the influential groups shaping Harappan society. Although large temples are absent, the presence of ritual platforms, fire altars, and symbolic artifacts suggests the existence of priestly or spiritual authorities. These figures may have guided communal rituals, overseen burial practices, or maintained symbolic traditions expressed through seals and figurines. In a society where public works, sanitation, and civic order were deeply valued, religious leaders may have reinforced cultural norms that supported cooperation over dominance. Another group that likely held significant power was the merchant class. Harappan trade networks stretched across vast distances, from the alluvial plains of the Indus to the deserts of Central Asia and the shores of the Arabian Peninsula. Managing these exchanges required knowledge, negotiation skills, and control over resources. Merchant guilds or trade councils may have coordinated economic activities, ensured fair measurement systems, and helped maintain peaceful relations with foreign regions. Craft specialists also contributed to the social fabric, especially in cities where workshops were concentrated. Skilled artisans who produced high-quality beads, pottery, metal tools, and textiles may have held elevated social positions. Their expertise was essential to maintaining the civilization's reputation as a producer of valuable goods, and their work contributed to the cultural cohesion seen across Harappan cities. The distribution of industrial areas within cities provides further insight into social organization. Workshops for bead-making, pottery firing, and metalworking were often located in designated districts away from residential neighborhoods. This spatial separation suggests that city planners recognize the need to organize work areas strategically, possibly under the direction of local administrators or professional guilds. Such organization reflects a society capable of coordinating labor and regulating urban space effectively. Public works projects offer additional evidence of administrative sophistication. Constructing drainage systems, wells, reservoirs, and large public buildings required coordinated labor and consistent oversight. These projects involved not only skilled builders, but also workers drawn from the general population. The successful execution of such works over generations indicates that Harappan society benefited from stable leadership and an organized labor system, possibly involving community obligations or rotating work crews. One of the most intriguing clues about social structure comes from Harappan burial practices. The civilization did not build monumental tombs or bury individuals with extravagant grave goods. Instead, Cemeteries reveal modest pit graves, sometimes accompanied by pottery or simple ornaments. The lack of dramatic variation in burials suggests a cultural emphasis on equality or moderation. Even if elites existed, they did not express their status through lavish mortuary displays. This preference for understated social expression aligns with the overall character of Harappan society. Instead of focusing on individual power, the civilization invested in communal structures and shared cultural practices. This approach may have helped maintain social harmony within dense urban environments where people of diverse backgrounds lived and worked closely together. Political organization likely varied from region to region. Some large cities, such as Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, may have acted as powerful regional centers, coordinating trade, storage, and administration across broad areas. Smaller towns and villages may have been governed by local councils or influential families. Rather than a single capital ruling the entire civilization, Harappan society may have functioned as a loose federation of cities connected by shared standards, cultural unity, and economic interdependence. The consistency of civic systems across distant sites suggests that these regional authorities communicated regularly. Trade routes, river networks, and shared symbols likely facilitated the movement of goods and ideas. Through these channels, administrative practices, architectural designs, and cultural traditions circulated, ensuring coherence across the civilization even in the absence of a centralized empire. Understanding the spiritual world of the Harappan civilization requires careful attention to subtle clues rather than explicit declarations. Unlike ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Harappans left behind no monumental temples, no carved hymns, and no written myths to reveal their religious beliefs. Their script remains undeciphered. Their sacred stories are silent, and their ritual specialists remain nameless. Yet the civilization's archaeological record contains abundant hints about how its people understood the sacred, honored natural forces, and expressed spiritual meaning through objects, symbols, and carefully designed spaces. What emerges from this evidence is a picture of a civilization whose religious life was woven into the fabric of daily existence. Rather than relying on towering monuments or elite-controlled temples, Harappan communities express spirituality through modest ritual structures, household objects, symbolic motifs, and shared traditions that connected people across a vast geographical region. Their sacred world was grounded in nature, community, and continuity. A central example of Harappan ritual architecture is the famous water tank often called the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro. Although the name bath may suggest a purely practical function, the structure's carefully sealed brickwork, central placement within a prominent mound, and impressive construction quality point to a special purpose. The tank's deep rectangular shape, surrounding colonnades, and accessible stairways indicate that its use involved deliberate, repeated, and perhaps ceremonial actions. Scholars interpret it as a space for some form of communal cleansing, ritual purification, or public gathering. Its construction required coordinated labor and resources, reflecting the value the community placed on shared ritual experiences. Yet the Great Bath stands alone in its scale. Other cities contain water-related features, but none match its monumental design. This difference hints at the localized nature of Harappan ritual life. While certain symbols and practices were shared widely, each city may have expressed spiritual traditions in ways shaped by local needs and identities. Beyond major structures, smaller ritual platforms appear at several sites. For example, in the city of Kalibangan, archaeologists uncovered a row of brick platforms that may have been used for offerings or ceremonial fires. These platforms show clear signs of controlled burning, consistent with ritual activity rather than domestic cooking. Their orderly arrangement suggests repeated use within a structured ritual tradition. The practice of fire rituals appears elsewhere as well, particularly in Harappan settlements located in present-day Gujarat. In these sites, archaeologists found well-constructed fire altars with ash deposits that indicate repeated ceremonial use. The significance of fire in Harappan spirituality remains open to interpretation, but its presence across multiple regions suggests that it held shared symbolic importance, perhaps related to purification, transformation, or communication with divine forces. Terracotta figurines also provide important clues about Harappan religious beliefs. Many figurines depict female figures with exaggerated hips, which earlier scholars interpreted as representations of a fertility goddess. However, modern research urges caution. These figurines may indeed relate to fertility, but they may also represent household deities, protective spirits, symbolic ancestors, or objects used in simple domestic rituals. Because they appear in ordinary homes rather than monumental temples, they highlight the intimate, everyday nature of Harappan spiritual practice. Other figurines depict animals, bulls, elephants, dogs, and other creatures integral to Harappan life. These likely held symbolic roles, perhaps linked to agricultural cycles, familial protection, or communal identity. The Harappans seem to maintain a close relationship with nature, expressing spiritual meaning through the animals that shared their world. This connection is echoed in the imagery found on seals. The carved seals of the Harappan world frequently display animals arranged in distinctive poses. The most famous of these is the unicorn-like figure, a stylized creature that appears on a significant share of known seals. Although the exact meaning of the unicorn remains mysterious, its wide distribution suggests that it held powerful symbolic value, perhaps representing a clan emblem, a profession, or a protective force. Other animals such as the humped bull, elephant, and rhinoceros appear on seals as well, each one bearing cultural significance. One of the most debated seal images depicts a seated figure surrounded by animals. Often seated in a yogic posture, the figure wears a horned headdress and appears to occupy a central position among the animals. Early scholars link this image to later Indian traditions, proposing that the figure represented a proto-Shiva or lord of animals, although such interpretations remain speculative. The imagery suggests themes of authority, guardianship, or spiritual mastery over the natural world. Even without deciphered texts, the posture and symbolism indicate an important ritual or spiritual role. Trees also played a significant part in Harappan symbolic life. The pipal tree, with its heart-shaped leaves, appears in artwork and seals. In one seal impression, a pipal tree grows over a shrine-like structure, suggesting that the tree itself was considered sacred. This reverence aligns with broader South Asian traditions in which certain trees symbolize life, renewal, or divine presence. The Harappans may have viewed the natural landscape not as separate from the sacred, but as part of its very foundation. Household rituals formed another important layer of Harappan spiritual practice. Many homes contained small altars, platforms, or niches where family members might have placed offerings or figurines. The purposes of these private rituals likely varied: honoring ancestors, seeking protection, ensuring prosperity, or maintaining the well-being of the household. Such intimate expressions of faith reflect the deeply personal nature of spirituality in Harappan life. Rather than relying solely on large-scale ceremonies, families crafted their own sacred routines within their living spaces. Burial practices offer additional insights. While the Harappans did not build monumental tombs, they treated the dead with care and consistency. Most burials were simple, with the body laid out in an extended position and accompanied by pottery or small personal ornaments. The uniformity of these burials suggests shared beliefs about death, memory, and the afterlife. Grave goods were modest, reflecting a culture that emphasized equality and continuity, rather than elaborate displays of status. The dead may have been honored not through grand monuments, but through community rituals and ongoing remembrance. Another important window into Harappan spiritual life comes from amulets, charms, and small symbolic objects. These items often featured geometric shapes, animals, or abstract motifs that likely carried protective or ritual significance. Some amulets were pierced so they could be worn around the neck or wrist, allowing individuals to carry spiritual protection throughout their daily activities. These objects reinforce the idea that religion was not confined to formal settings. It accompanied people through their work, travels, and household routines. Water, too, held spiritual importance for the Harappans. The careful design of wells, baths, and drainage systems reveals a cultural emphasis on cleanliness. While hygiene certainly had practical benefits, it also carried symbolic weight. Many ancient cultures viewed water as a medium of purification or transition, and the Harappans may have shared these beliefs. Ritual washing, cleansing before ceremonies, or symbolic immersion may have been part of their spiritual traditions, supported by the infrastructure built into their cities. As the Harappan civilization reached its mature phase, it spread across an immense and varied landscape. Rather than forming a single, uniform cultural block, the civilization revealed a rich tapestry of regional expressions. Cities, towns, and rural settlements shared core features: standardized weights, distinctive seals, carefully planned streets, and a recognizable artistic vocabulary. Yet each region adapted these shared traditions to its own environmental setting, available resources, and historical trajectory. Understanding this diversity helps illuminate the flexibility and resilience that allowed the Harappan world to endure for centuries. The northern regions around Harappa, the southern plains around Mohenjo-daro, the desert-edge settlements of Rajasthan, the coastal centers of Gujarat, and the highland sites near Baluchistan each developed their own architectural patterns, industrial strengths, and cultural priorities. These regional variations did not fragment the civilization. Rather, they formed a dynamic network of interconnected centers, each contributing to the vibrancy of the broader Harappan world. Harappa, located in the northern Punjab plains, provides a powerful example of how a major urban center adapted to its environment. Positioned near important routes linking the Indus plains to the highlands of Afghanistan and Central Asia, Harappa served as a gateway for goods such as metals, timber, and stone. This strategic placement helped the city flourish as a commercial and administrative hub. Harappa's distinctiveness emerges in the arrangement of its multiple mounds, each functioning as a separate but interconnected district. While the city shared the standardized brickwork and grid-like layout typical of Harappan design, it also displayed unique features, such as specialized craft areas and a remarkable range of burial practices. Mohenjo-daro, located far to the south along the lower Indus River, developed its own regional character. The city's scale, architectural sophistication, and density of housing distinguished it as a major urban center in a landscape shaped by seasonal flooding and fertile plains. The southern region benefited from rich alluvial deposits, making agriculture particularly productive. Mohenjo-daro's engineers responded to its flood-prone environment by constructing elevated platforms, terraced mounds, and robust drainage systems. The famous water tank, often referred to as the Great Bath, reflects not only cultural values, but also the abundance of water resources in the region. Mohenjo-daro's layout demonstrates an exceptional integration of environmental adaptation and urban design. Further west, along the frontier of the Iranian plateau, settlements in Baluchistan and the surrounding highlands displayed distinct architectural traditions. Many towns in these regions featured stone foundations, fortified enclosures, and compact housing clusters arranged to follow natural slopes. These highland communities played an important role in connecting the Harappan heartland with regions further west. They supplied raw materials such as copper, semi-precious stones, and pastoral goods, acting as intermediaries between urban centers and distant trade partners. Although these settlements were smaller than major Indus cities, they contributed essential resources and served as cultural bridges between geographic zones. Turning to the desert margins of Rajasthan and Haryana, cities such as Kalibangan reveal yet another dimension of regional variation. Located near the Ghaggar-Hakra river system, Kalibangan exhibited a distinct urban plan with fortified enclosures, well-organized streets, and carefully designed platforms possibly linked to ritual or ceremonial activity. One of the site's most striking features is the evidence of agricultural furrows found in nearby fields, suggesting that this region practiced a unique form of plowed agriculture, different from the flood-based farming of the Indus Plains. This adaptation to a semi-arid environment shows how regional conditions shaped economic and cultural life. In the coastal regions of Gujarat, the Harappan world took on a maritime character. Cities such as Lothal, Dholavira, and Rangpur developed distinctive approaches to water management, craft production, and trade. Lothal, famous for its dock-like basin, reflects the importance of seafaring and overseas trade in the region. Its proximity to the Gulf of Khambat allowed merchants to exchange goods with distant lands across the Arabian Sea. The city's warehouses, bead-making workshops, and shell processing areas reveal a bustling port economy. Dholavira, located on the island-like wedge of land within the Rann of Kutch, stands out for its monumental water management system. Unlike cities situated near perennial rivers, Dholavira relied on careful harvesting and storage of rainwater. Its engineers constructed massive reservoirs carved into the ground, interconnected channels, and stepped structures that allowed the city to survive in an otherwise harsh environment. This ingenuity reflects a regional approach finely tuned to local challenges. Dholavira's urban planning, inscription-bearing signboard, and monumental architecture make it one of the most distinctive Harappan cities discovered to date. Coastal settlements in Gujarat also expanded Harappan craft industries. Shellcraft, for example, flourished in this region due to easy access to marine resources. Shell bangles, ornaments, and decorative objects produced in Gujarat reached inland cities hundreds of kilometers away. The specialization of coastal artisans highlights how different regions contributed unique goods to the wider Harappan economy. In the deep interior regions near Cholistan and Bahawalpur, sites such as Ganeriwala hint at the existence of major urban centers along the now dry Ghaggar-Hakra river. While these sites are less extensively excavated than Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, their size and layout suggest that they were once important administrative or ritual hubs. Their presence strengthens the idea that the Harappan world was not a narrow riverine civilization, but a broad network of distributed centers adapted to varied landscapes. Regional diversity also appears in pottery styles, decorative motifs, and craft materials. While standardized pottery forms existed across the civilization, distinct local styles emerged in different regions. The black-on-red painted ware typical of the Indus heartland contrasts with the unique shapes and motifs found in Gujarat or the highlands. These variations served local tastes and traditions, even as they adhered to broader cultural patterns. Similarly, raw materials such as stone, metals, and shells were used differently depending on what was available in each region. Despite this diversity, regional centers remained interconnected through trade, shared cultural symbols, and consistent urban design principles. Standardized weights, seals featuring common motifs, and familiar craft techniques show that the civilization maintained a strong degree of cohesion. A merchant traveling from Mohenjo-daro to Harappa or from Lothal to Dholavira would have recognized familiar patterns in architecture, measurement, and symbolism, even as they encountered local differences. This combination of unity and diversity suggests a decentralized but integrated civilization. Rather than imposing uniformity through centralized control, the Harappan world allowed regions to develop their own identities while maintaining cultural ties that spanned vast distances. This flexibility may have contributed to the civilization's longevity. By allowing each region to adapt to local conditions, the Harappans created a system resilient to environmental and economic fluctuations. Regional diversity also extended to ritual and symbolic practices. While certain motifs, such as the unicorn seal, peepal tree, or bull, appeared across the civilization, local variations existed. Some regions favored specific figurines or developed unique ritual spaces. These variations likely reflected local traditions, ecological influences, and community identities. Yet the overarching symbolic language remained recognizable, indicating that the shared Harappan worldview could accommodate regional expression without losing coherence. As the Harappan civilization matured into one of the great urban cultures of the ancient world, its influence stretched far beyond the Indus region. Harappan merchants, artisans, and travelers interacted with distant societies, exchanging not only goods, but also ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. These interactions reveal a civilization deeply engaged with the world around it. Positioned at the crossroads of ancient trade routes that connected South Asia to Mesopotamia, the Iranian Plateau, and the oasis cultures of Central Asia. Understanding these connections helps us see the Harappans not as an isolated culture, but as active participants in the wider Bronze Age world. One of the strongest bodies of evidence for long-distance interaction comes from ancient Mesopotamia, located in present-day Iraq. Mesopotamian texts refer repeatedly to a distant land called Meluha, described as a source of exotic goods, seafaring merchants, and high-quality craft items. Many scholars identify Meluha as the Harappan region, based on archaeological finds and geographic descriptions. While the exact boundaries of Meluha remain debated, there is little doubt that the civilizations of the Indus and Mesopotamia knew of each other and maintained trade links across vast distances. Mesopotamian records mention Meluhan merchants arriving by boat, bringing goods such as beads, precious woods, ivory, and possibly cotton textiles. These goods match those produced by Harappan artisans, particularly the finely drilled carnelian beads that appear in Mesopotamian tombs and elite workshops. The presence of Indus-style seals in Mesopotamia further strengthens the connection. Although not abundant, these seals feature motifs and script signs characteristic of the Harappan world, suggesting that some Harappan individuals lived or traded in Mesopotamian cities. In return, the Harappans may have obtained copper from the Arabian Peninsula, silver from Western regions, and rare stones from Central Asia. Some Mesopotamian artifacts found in Harappan sites, such as cylindrical seals or specific metal objects, could be the result of direct contact or indirect trade through intermediary cultures. Whether through direct voyages across the Arabian Sea or through overland routes linking multiple regions, the exchange between the two civilizations enriched both sides and contributed to the broader economic tapestry of the Bronze Age. The Arabian Peninsula played an important role in facilitating this exchange. The ancient land of Mehrgarh, often associated with present-day Oman, appears in Mesopotamian texts as a source of copper. Archaeological evidence shows that the Harappans were familiar with copper from this region, which they used in tools, ornaments, and ritual objects. Some coastal Harappan settlements, especially in Gujarat, may have served as departure points for voyages to Oman or the Persian Gulf. The presence of Harappan-style pottery and artifacts in Arabian sites suggests a two-way flow of goods and cultural contact. Further inland, the Iranian plateau formed another major zone of interaction. The Harappan world shared boundaries with several important cultures in present-day Iran, including those associated with sites such as Tepe-Hisar, Shahdad, and the Halil Rud region. These societies produced metals, ceramics, and ornaments that show stylistic parallels to Harappan crafts. The exchange between the Indus region and Iran likely occurred through a combination of land routes passing through Baluchistan and maritime routes along the Persian Gulf. One of the most important conduits linking the Harappans to the Iranian plateau was the network of settlements in Baluchistan. These highland communities served as intermediaries, collecting goods from the Indus plains and passing them westward, while importing metals, stones, and crafted items in return. The movement of carnelian beads from the Indus to Iranian sites, and the presence of Iranian metals in Harappan workshops, reveal a complex exchange system shaped by geography and mutual interest. Central Asia also played a significant role in long-distance interactions. The oasis cultures of Bactria and Margiana, located in present-day Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and northern Afghanistan, developed rich urban societies with their own craft traditions, monumental architecture, and artistic styles. These regions, collectively known as the Bactria-Margiana Archaeological Complex, produced metal objects, seals, and ceramics that sometimes resemble Harappan forms. While the exact nature of contact remains debated, archaeological evidence shows that goods moved between Central Asia and the Indus region, possibly through merchants, pastoral nomads, or seasonal caravans. Lapis lazuli, one of the most prized stones of the ancient world, provides a clear example of this long-distance exchange. The best sources of lapis lazuli lay in the high mountains of Badakhshan in northeastern Afghanistan. This deep blue stone traveled long distances across trade routes that connected the highlands with the Indus plains and onward to Mesopotamia and Egypt. Harappan artisans used lapis lazuli in beads and ornaments, demonstrating not only their participation in long-distance trade, but also their appreciation for materials imbued with symbolic and aesthetic value. These connections did more than move goods. They generated cultural influence. Through trade and travel, the Harappans encountered foreign technologies, artistic styles, and ritual practices. Some objects found at Harappan sites reflect stylistic motifs associated with Western cultures, suggesting that artisans may have adapted or reinterpreted ideas gleaned from distant regions. Similarly, Harappan motifs and materials reached foreign lands, where they were integrated into local artistic traditions. One particularly intriguing question concerns the role of Harappan merchants abroad. Mesopotamian texts refer to interpreters used to communicate with Meluhan merchants, suggesting that Harappan traders may have spoken their own language and required intermediaries to conduct business. This implies a degree of linguistic and cultural distinction between the civilizations, even as they maintained commercial ties. If Harappan merchants settled temporarily in Mesopotamia or other regions, they may have established small communities that facilitated ongoing exchange. The Harappans demonstrated remarkable skill in maritime activity. Their coastal settlements, especially those in Gujarat, reveal evidence of shipbuilding, dock construction, and harbor management. These facilities enabled the civilization to maintain regular sea routes that linked the Indus region to other parts of the ancient world. Harappan ships may have followed seasonal monsoon winds, sailing westward during one season and returning eastward during another. This maritime expertise allowed the Harappans to participate in one of the earliest known networks of transoceanic exchange. Long-distance interaction also influenced the economic organization of the Harappan world. Access to foreign metals and stones encouraged specialized craft industries within the Indus region. Workshops dedicated to bead-making, shell processing, and metalwork benefited from imported raw materials, which they transformed into high-value goods for export. This exchange system created a cycle of economic interdependence. Foreign societies valued Harappan craftsmanship, while Harappan artisans relied on imported resources to sustain their industries. The movement of goods between distant regions required administrative control. The Harappans may have used seals and inscriptions to track shipments, verify ownership, or record transactions. The presence of standardized weights across the civilization helped ensure fair trade both within the Indus region and with foreign partners. These systems made long-distance exchange more predictable, reinforcing the stability of economic relations. Cultural interaction with neighboring civilizations was not limited to trade and artifacts. Ideas about administration, ritual practice, or artistic expression may have traveled along with material goods. Although each civilization preserved its own identity, subtle influences can be seen in the forms of pottery, metal objects, and architectural designs. These shared elements reflect the broader interconnectedness of the Bronze Age world. For centuries, the Harappan civilization thrived across a vast landscape, supported by fertile floodplains, stable river systems, and reliable monsoon patterns. Yet no civilization, no matter how resilient, exists in isolation from the forces of nature. By the later stages of the mature Harappan era, subtle but accumulating environmental stresses began to shape the world of the Indus people. These pressures did not immediately erase their cities or disrupt their culture, but they introduced vulnerabilities that gradually reshaped settlement patterns, agricultural practices, and economic stability. Understanding these early signs of strain helps us see how a civilization built on careful planning and environmental adaptation eventually faced challenges beyond its control. The strength of the Harappan economy depended heavily on river systems such as the Indus and the Ghaggar-Hakra. These rivers provided fertile soil through seasonal flooding and supported the agricultural cycles that fed large urban populations. But rivers are never static. Over time, courses shift, channels dry, and flood patterns change. Evidence from geological studies, ancient sediments, and satellite imagery indicates that significant transformations occurred in the river systems of the northwestern subcontinent during the later stages of the Harappan era. One of the most important of these changes involved the Ghaggar-Hakra system, often associated with the ancient Sarasvati mentioned in later Indian literature. During the earlier phases of the Harappan world, this river system likely carried more water, fed by monsoon rains and possibly by glacial melt from distant ranges. Along its banks stood numerous settlements, some of considerable size. Over time, however, the flow of the Ghaggar-Hakra decreased. Geological evidence suggests a gradual weakening of the monsoon and shifts in river tributaries that reduced the volume of water reaching the channel. As the river became increasingly seasonal, communities living along its banks faced new challenges. These environmental changes influenced agriculture profoundly. Fields that once relied on predictable flooding or shallow groundwater began to dry out. Farmers were forced to adjust crop choices, irrigation strategies, and settlement patterns. In some regions, agricultural yields may have declined. Reduced harvests would have affected urban centers that depended on steady supplies of grain and livestock. While the drying of the Ghaggar-Hakra system marked one aspect of environmental strain, the Indus River itself posed challenges of a different kind. In certain periods, shifting channels and unpredictable floods affected cities like Mohenjo-daro. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of repeated rebuilding in some parts of the city, suggesting that flooding damaged important neighborhoods and required laborious repair efforts. These floods did not destroy the city outright, but they placed ongoing stress on urban infrastructure and resources. Beyond river behavior, broader climatic conditions began to shift. Studies of lake sediments, pollen records, and marine cores point to a gradual weakening of the monsoon system during the later Bronze Age. Less rainfall meant reduced soil moisture, lower river levels, and greater difficulty sustaining large-scale agriculture. The Harappans had long developed strategies to cope with variable monsoon seasons, but a sustained decline posed new and persistent challenges. Water scarcity affected not only farming, but also daily urban life. Cities built around complex drainage systems and numerous wells depended on reliable groundwater. As groundwater levels changed in response to shrinking river flows and reduced rainfall, maintaining these systems became more difficult. Wells had to be deepened, new ones constructed, and water accessed with greater effort. These incremental strains, though not catastrophic on their own, added layers of difficulty to urban living. In regions such as Gujarat, communities adapted by enhancing water storage and harvesting techniques. Cities like Dholavira expanded their reservoirs, designing intricate channels to capture and conserve water. These innovations demonstrate the resilience and ingenuity of Harappan engineers. However, adaptation in one region could not fully compensate for widespread climatic shifts affecting the entire civilization. Even the best designed systems have limits when environmental change becomes prolonged. Trade networks also experienced indirect effects from environmental strain. As agricultural output fluctuated, the availability of surplus goods for exchange diminished. Cities that relied on exporting high-quality craft items in exchange for raw materials may have faced greater competition or reduced demand. Changes in river navigability could have disrupted internal transport routes, making it harder to move goods between regions. When trade slows, economies become more fragile, and social stresses begin to accumulate. These environmental pressures also influenced population movement. Archaeological evidence indicates that some urban areas saw declines in population density during this period. People may have migrated from large cities to smaller towns or rural areas where agriculture was more sustainable. This shift reflects a reorganization of settlement patterns rather than a sudden collapse. As conditions changed, communities adjusted by dispersing into regions better suited to evolving environmental realities. Urban vulnerability became more evident through signs of reduced maintenance in major cities. In places like Mohenjo-daro, later levels of occupation reveal less consistent upkeep of drainage systems, more haphazard construction practices, and signs of congestion in certain districts. These changes do not signify disorder, but rather indicate that the resources required to maintain the earlier high standards of urban planning were becoming strained. Another important factor involves the interplay between environmental change and economic complexity. The Harappan world depended on a finely balanced system of agriculture, craft production, and trade. When one element faced sustained pressure, such as declining water availability, its effects rippled throughout the entire system. A decrease in agricultural productivity affected the ability to support specialized artisans, which in turn influenced the production of trade goods. Reduced trade affected the availability of imported resources like copper or precious stones, limiting the capacity of workshops to maintain output. These interconnected pressures slowly reshaped the economic foundations of the civilization. As the mature Harappan civilization entered its later centuries, the cumulative pressures of environmental change, shifting river systems, and economic strain gradually transformed the landscape of urban life. This transformation did not take the form of a sudden or catastrophic collapse. Instead, it unfolded slowly, generation by generation, as cities that had once thrived at the center of a vast cultural network began to contract. In their place emerged smaller towns, rural communities, and new regional cultures that carried forward elements of the Harappan world while adapting to changing circumstances. This long decline, while marked by loss, was also a period of adaptation and transition. To understand this shift, it is important to recognize that the Harappan civilization had grown within a delicate balance of environmental stability and social organization. Its cities depended on predictable river flows, reliable agricultural output, and coordinated administrative systems. When these foundations came under stress, the effects rippled across the entire civilization. Yet the Harappans responded not with chaos, but with pragmatic adjustments, redistributing populations, modifying settlement patterns, and adopting new economic strategies. One of the earliest signs of the urban decline appears in changes to settlement size and density. Archaeological layers in cities such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro reveal that certain neighborhoods were abandoned or repurposed. Large public structures show signs of reduced maintenance, and construction becomes less uniform. Streets that were once meticulously cleared and repaired begin accumulating debris, suggesting that the labor systems responsible for public works were weakening. These changes do not indicate disorder, but rather a reduction in the collective resources available to sustain extensive urban management. As environmental pressures continued, some urban residents may have chosen to leave the cities voluntarily. Farmers facing declining water supplies or reduced crop yields may have relocated closer to more reliable rivers or to areas where rain-fed agriculture was more feasible. Artisans dependent on imported raw materials may have found it harder to sustain specialized crafts, prompting them to pursue different livelihoods in rural settings. Merchants may have adjusted their trade routes as long-distance exchange networks became less predictable. These shifts weakened the economic and social concentration that had once supported large urban centers. One of the most significant geographical changes occurred along the Ghaggar-Hakra river system, where many Harappan settlements had once flourished. As this river system became increasingly seasonal or dried out entirely in certain stretches, communities that depended on it faced mounting challenges. Numerous settlements along its banks show signs of gradual abandonment. Rather than disappearing abruptly, people appear to have moved along more sustainable routes, clustering around areas where water remained available. This migration created new clusters of rural and semi-urban communities, reshaping the map of habitation across the region. The decline of Mohenjo-daro provides another illustrative example. Once one of the largest and most impressive cities of the ancient world, Mohenjo-daro faced repeated flooding as the Indus River shifted. Over time, the effort required to rebuild, maintain, and protect the city grew too great. Occupation layers reveal that some districts were repaired repeatedly, while others were abandoned. Eventually, the scale and density of settlement diminished significantly. Mohenjo-daro did not fall in a single dramatic moment. Rather, it gradually transformed into a less complex settlement, unable to sustain its earlier grandeur. Harappa followed a similar pattern. Although the city remained occupied for generations beyond its peak. Later layers show reduced planning, simpler construction techniques, and declining use of standardized materials. The cultural unity that once defined the mature Harappan period began to loosen, replaced by more localized traditions. Crafts continued, but with diminishing central coordination. Storage facilities remained, but their function may have shifted as agricultural production changed. At the same time, new settlements began to emerge in other regions. The archaeological record shows an increase in smaller communities across Punjab, Haryana, Gujarat, and even areas further into the Ganges Plain. These new sites typically lacked the sophisticated planning of earlier Harappan cities. Streets were less rigidly organized, houses were simpler, and public infrastructure was more modest. Yet these settlements carried forward aspects of Harappan material culture, such as pottery styles, weights, and certain craft techniques. This continuity reflects the persistence of Harappan traditions even as urban life faded. The transformation of trade networks also played a vital role in the decline of large cities. As agricultural output fluctuated and environmental conditions shifted, long-distance trade became harder to maintain. The flow of goods between the Indus plains and regions such as Mesopotamia or the Iranian plateau diminished. Demand for Harappan craft items may have declined abroad, or access to essential imported materials may have become more difficult. Without the economic vitality that trade once provided, urban centers lost another pillar supporting their existence. The weakening of trade also reduced contact between major cities within the Harappan sphere. This decline in interregional communication contributed to the diversification of cultural practices. Pottery styles, which had once exhibited remarkable uniformity across the civilization, became more varied. Local communities began to interpret shared traditions in distinct ways, contributing to the emergence of regional cultural identities that would define the late Harappan period. Changes in political organization likely accompanied these economic shifts. Large-scale administrative systems that once managed public works, coordinated distribution, and maintained standardized practices may have become less effective as populations dispersed and resources dwindled. Local leaders, councils, or influential families may have taken on greater responsibility, shaping new forms of governance suited to smaller communities. These changes represented not a collapse of order, but a decentralization of power, reflecting the needs of an evolving society. Religious practices also transformed during this period. While earlier Harappan cities had included ritual structures, communal baths, and symbolic imagery integrated into public life, the later period saw an expansion of household-based rituals. Small shrines, figurines, and localized symbols became more prominent. This shift toward domestic ritual practices parallels broader social changes, as communities turned inward and focused on immediate, local concerns rather than large-scale communal ceremonies. One of the most important aspects of the Harappan decline is the gradual change in material culture. The famous standardized seals become less common, and the distinctive script appears less frequently. Bricks continue to be used, but the precise ratios that once defined Harappan construction become less consistent. Pottery production remains active, but incorporates new shapes, decorations, and techniques. These changes reflect a society evolving toward new cultural identities rather than a society in free fall. In some areas, evidence points to the relocation of populations toward the east, where the monsoon system remained somewhat more reliable. Early settlements in the Ganges Plain show signs of interaction with Harappan traditions. As communities migrated or spread cultural practices eastward, they contributed to the foundations of later civilizations in northern India. This movement highlights the broader legacy of the Harappan world. Even as cities declined, their influence extended into new regions and shaped emerging cultures. As the great urban centers of the Harappan civilization gradually diminished, a profound cultural transition unfolded across the northwestern subcontinent. This was the late Harappan phase, a period marked not by collapse or disappearance, but by adaptation, continuity, and change. Communities dispersed into smaller towns and villages. New regional cultures emerged, and older practices merged with innovative traditions. The result was a transformed landscape in which the legacy of the Harappan world continued to shape daily life even as society moved in new directions. To appreciate this transformation, it is essential to recognize that civilizations rarely vanish abruptly. Instead, they evolve as environmental conditions shift, technologies change, populations migrate, and cultural interactions intensify. The late Harappan phase exemplifies this process. While the famous cities of the mature Harappan era, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, Kalibangan, and others, lost their central prominence, the cultural habits, ideas, and technologies developed during their glory days did not disappear overnight. They persisted, adapted, and mingled with new influences, creating a mosaic of regional traditions. One of the most visible signs of change in the late Harappan period is the diversification of material culture. Pottery styles, once remarkably standardized across the civilization, became more region-specific. In Punjab and Haryana, for example, red and gray wares developed distinctive shapes and designs, reflecting local tastes and evolving techniques. In Gujarat, pottery displayed new decorative motifs and adapted forms suited to changing lifestyles. This increasing diversity indicates that communities were reorganizing their social identities, drawing on Harappan traditions while developing new aesthetic expressions. These regional differences also appear in settlement patterns. In the mature Harappan period, large cities dominated the landscape. In the late Harappan phase, however, smaller towns and village clusters became the predominant form of habitation. These settlements generally lacked the elaborate planning, standardized brickwork, and extensive drainage systems that had characterized earlier cities. Instead, they exhibited simpler layouts, often shaped by local environmental conditions. Houses tended to be more modest, relying on mud bricks rather than the baked bricks widely used during the mature phase. These changes reveal a shift toward local autonomy and practical adaptation. Even though administrative systems of the earlier Harappan world became less centralized, certain practices persisted. The use of weights, though no longer strictly standardized, continued in some regions. Symbols resembling Harappan script occasionally appeared on pottery or small objects, though far less frequently than before. The seal tradition, so prominent during the mature Harappan period, declined significantly. Seals themselves became rare, and their inscriptions grew simpler. This suggests that administrative practices were becoming more localized and less reliant on the complex, bureaucratic tools once needed to manage large urban populations and long-distance trade. Trade networks did not disappear, but they became more regional in scope. With the reduction of large-scale urban centers, long-distance maritime and overland trade diminished. Communities turned more toward local production and nearby exchange. Farmers, artisans, and traders focused on supplying local needs rather than producing goods for export to distant regions like Mesopotamia or the Iranian plateau. This more localized economy influenced cultural development, as communities relied increasingly on local resources and techniques. Agriculture remained central, but it adapted to shifting environmental realities. In some areas, reliance on rain-fed farming increased as river systems changed. New crops gained prominence, and agricultural strategies diversified to suit local conditions. Communities in the Ganges Plain, for example, began incorporating rice cultivation more heavily into their agricultural repertoire. Meanwhile, in drier regions, farmers adjusted planting cycles and irrigation methods to cope with fluctuating monsoon patterns. Social organization also evolved during this period. Without large cities to coordinate labor and governance, local leadership structures gained importance. Village elders, clan leaders, or influential families may have taken on roles previously managed by broader administrative systems. These localized forms of governance allowed communities to remain resilient in the face of environmental and economic challenges. While political structures became more fragmented, they also became more adaptable. Religious and ritual practices experienced a similar transformation. The grand communal spaces of earlier cities, such as the monumental water tank at Mohenjo-daro, were no longer central to social life. Instead, ritual activities shifted toward household and village contexts. Terracotta figurines, small altars, and simple shrines became more common. These objects show continuity with earlier Harappan symbolism while revealing new local interpretations. Rituals likely focused on community well-being, agricultural cycles, and family lineage. The emphasis on nature, fertility, and protective symbolism continued, but in new forms. One of the most intriguing aspects of the late Harappan period is the emergence of hybrid cultural zones. As populations migrated or interacted with neighboring groups, Harappan traditions blended with those of other regional cultures. In the Punjab and Upper Ganges regions, elements of Harappan pottery styles merged with local traditions, producing new ceramic types unique to this transitional era. Similar blending occurred in Gujarat, where coastal communities developed hybrid cultural expressions influenced by earlier Harappan practices and local innovations. These hybrid traditions reflect not only cultural adaptation, but also population movement. As water sources shifted and agricultural lands changed, people relocated to regions with more reliable resources. Some moved eastward toward the Ganges Plain, where rainfall patterns remained more stable. Others settled in central or southern parts of the subcontinent. These migrations contributed to the spread of Harappan cultural traits across wider geographic regions, influencing the formation of later South Asian cultures. Despite the loss of large urban centers, craftsmanship continued in many late Harappan communities. Potters, bead makers, and metalworkers maintained their skills, though often on a smaller scale. In Gujarat, workshops continued producing shell ornaments and beads, drawing on local marine resources. In Punjab and Haryana, pottery production remained active, with artisans adapting to new demands and aesthetic preferences. Metalworking persisted as well, though copper and bronze production waned in regions where long-distance trade had once supplied essential raw materials. One important change during this era is the simplification of certain craft traditions. While mature Harappan bead-making involved complex drilling techniques and heat treatments, late Harappan beads tended to be simpler, both in shape and in finish. Pottery became more functional and less finely decorated. Such simplification does not represent a loss of skill, but reflects adaptation to new economic realities. Without large-scale trade networks or urban markets, crafts shifted toward meeting local needs. Burial practices in the late Harappan period show continuity with earlier traditions, such as extended body graves, but also reveal new customs. Some regions adopted burial urns or different orientations for the dead. Grave goods became simpler, often limited to a few pottery vessels or small ornaments. These variations highlight the emergence of new ritual traditions shaped by local identities and spiritual beliefs. Some scholars argue that the late Harappan phase marks the beginning of cultural developments that would later give rise to Vedic traditions in South Asia. Others caution that the relationship between Harappan and later cultures is complex and cannot be reduced to direct continuity. Still, many elements of later South Asian life, such as certain agricultural practices, aspects of village organization, and ritual symbolism, may trace their roots, at least in part, to late Harappan communities. Few topics in South Asian ancient history have generated as much debate, discussion, and reinterpretation as the relationship between the Harappan civilization and the groups associated with early Vedic traditions. This question has been shaped not only by archaeology and linguistics, but also by modern cultural identities, political narratives, and evolving scientific methods. To understand what might have happened during the transition from the late Harappan era to the early Vedic period, we must explore multiple lines of evidence while avoiding oversimplification. This section examines how scholars interpret population movements, linguistic developments, cultural interactions, and the complex layers of heritage that shape our understanding of the Harappan legacy. The central issue revolves around the arrival, or perceived arrival, of Indo-Aryan-speaking groups into the Indian subcontinent. Linguists have long recognized that Sanskrit, the language of the earliest Vedic texts, belongs to the Indo-European language family, a family that stretches from Europe to Iran. This linguistic connection suggests that speakers of early Indo-Aryan languages came from regions to the northwest of South Asia. The question is how and when these groups entered the subcontinent, and what their relationship was with the descendants of the Harappan civilization. One major hypothesis proposes that Indo-Aryan speaking groups migrated into South Asia through the passes of the Hindu Kush, gradually settling in the northwestern regions during the late 2nd millennium BCE. According to this view, the Harappan civilization, already transformed by environmental change and decentralization, encountered new populations who brought with them different cultural traditions, ritual practices, and linguistic systems. These interactions, whether peaceful or gradual, contributed to the cultural blend that later shaped early Vedic society. Another interpretation argues for a more complex process, with no single invasion or abrupt displacement. Instead, Indo-Aryan speaking groups may have arrived over extended periods, interacting with local people, adopting some cultural traits, and influencing others. In this model, the Harappan legacy did not vanish, but blended with incoming traditions to produce new cultural patterns. Supporters of this view caution against imagining a dramatic cultural break. Instead, they emphasize continuity and synthesis. Archaeological evidence supports the idea of cultural interaction rather than violent conquest. Sites across Punjab, Haryana, and the Ganges Plain show layers of late Harappan material alongside early signs of painted gray ware culture, often associated with early Vedic communities. These layers indicate coexistence, exchange, and gradual transition rather than destruction. No widespread signs of warfare, burning, or mass displacement have been found, suggesting that population movements were complex and multifaceted. Genetic research, though still evolving, adds additional nuance. Studies of ancient and modern DNA suggest that prehistoric South Asian populations were shaped by multiple migration events spread over thousands of years. Some genetic signals indicate contact between South Asian groups and populations from the Eurasian steppe, though the precise timing and scale remain subjects of ongoing study. Importantly, these findings do not support a scenario of large-scale replacement, but rather point to admixture, interactions between groups that blended genetic lineages. This mixture aligns with archaeological evidence of cultural blending. Early Vedic traditions include ritual practices, agricultural terms, and social structures that appear to reflect both Indo-Aryan and indigenous South Asian elements. For instance, some agricultural vocabulary in Sanskrit likely derives from earlier Harappan-related languages, suggesting deep interaction between farming communities and Indo-Aryan speakers. Similarly, the importance of cattle in both Harappan and early Vedic society reflects a shared regional emphasis rather than a foreign introduction. One of the most debated topics is the identification of the Harappan script and language. Since the script remains undeciphered, scholars cannot confirm its linguistic affiliation. Some propose that the Harappans spoke an early form of a Dravidian language, based on similarities between ancient place names and certain cultural terms. Others suggest that the Harappan language may belong to a different, now lost linguistic family. Without decipherment, the question remains open. What is clear is that linguistic landscapes in ancient South Asia were diverse and evolving, shaped by contact among multiple language families. Cultural continuity is also evident in religious and symbolic traditions. Certain motifs that appear in Harappan artifacts, such as sacred trees, animal iconography, and ritual fire altars, resonate with later South Asian spiritual practices. While this does not prove direct continuity, it suggests that cultural memory persisted across centuries. The landscapes inhabited by late Harappan communities were the same landscapes where early Vedic rituals were composed, Overlapping populations, shared environments, and intertwined economic networks fostered cultural blending. The Harappan emphasis on water, hygiene, and orderly urban planning has no direct counterpart in early Vedic society, which was more pastoral and decentralized. Yet some ritual practices involving purification, sacred waters, and fire appear in both cultural spheres. These similarities point to deep-rooted South Asian traditions that existed long before the arrival of Indo-Aryan-speaking groups and influenced later rituals. The influence likely flowed in both directions. While Indo-Aryan-speaking groups brought their own language, ritual poetry, and social structures, they also adopted agricultural techniques, local crops, and place-based traditions shaped by the Harappan world. As pastoral and agrarian lifestyles blended, new cultural forms emerged that would define the early historic periods of the subcontinent. Modern interpretations of the Aryan question have been strongly shaped by political ideologies and cultural narratives. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, European scholars sometimes framed Indo-Aryan migration theories with racial overtones or colonial assumptions. These interpretations, now widely rejected, contributed to misunderstandings and misrepresentations of South Asian history. In contrast, contemporary scholarship emphasizes complexity, diversity, and multi-directional cultural exchange rather than simplistic notions of invasion or replacement. On the other hand, some modern perspectives reject any form of external migration and argue that Indo-Aryan languages developed entirely within the subcontinent. However, linguistic and archaeological evidence strongly supports connections between Indo-Aryan and Indo-European languages outside South Asia. The challenge is to understand how these connections unfolded without relying on outdated or politically motivated models. A balanced view recognizes that ancient migrations were common across the world. People moved, exchanged ideas, traded goods, intermarried, and shaped one another's cultures. Such movements do not invalidate local heritage. They enrich it. The Harappan and early Vedic worlds were not isolated civilizations, but dynamic cultural landscapes where multiple populations interacted over long periods. For centuries after the transformation of the Harappan world, the once great cities of the Indus Valley slowly slipped from collective memory. Their streets, workshops, baths, and granaries, places once filled with human voices, music, treat, and ritual, eventually fell silent. Brick by brick, wall by wall, the achievements of one of the world's earliest urban civilizations faded beneath layers of earth, sand, and vegetation. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, where written traditions preserve the memory of ancient kingdoms, the Harappan civilization left behind no deciphered texts to record its stories, rulers, or rituals. Without such written continuity, the Indus cities became forgotten landscapes. The traces of Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and countless other sites remained scattered, their identities obscured through time. This disappearance from memory was not the result of a dramatic conquest or sudden erasure. Instead, it unfolded slowly and quietly, shaped by human adaptation, environmental change, and the constant layering of history. As late Harappan communities dispersed and regional cultures emerged, there was no particular reason for later generations to maintain the ruined cities or preserve their identities. People simply moved on, building new settlements in more favorable environments, leaving older ones to decay. One of the major factors contributing to the disappearance of Harappan cities was the gradual repurposing of their building materials. The baked bricks that had once formed walls, streets, wells, and drainage systems were exceptionally durable. This durability made them valuable to later populations who needed strong, ready-made bricks for constructing homes, temples, and fortifications. Local villagers, often unaware of the antiquity of these structures, dug into ancient mounds to extract bricks for reuse. This practice occurred over many centuries, slowly dismantling some of the most significant remains of the Harappan world. Evidence from colonial-era surveys documents how large portions of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa had already been stripped of their bricks long before modern archaeologists arrived. Villagers called these ancient mounds dead cities, or simply older places, attributing them to legendary or mythical pasts without knowing their true age. The absence of monumental inscriptions or identifiable royal structures made it even harder for later cultures to associate these ruins with a specific ancient civilization. The natural environment also played a key role in erasing the Harappan cities from visible history. The Indus River, which had supported many of the civilization's greatest settlements, shifted its course repeatedly over the centuries. In some cases, it moved far from former urban centers, leaving them stranded in dry plains. In other cases, floods buried sites under thick layers of silt. Wind-blown sand covered settlements near desert regions, while rising groundwater levels and natural erosion deteriorated exposed structures. Over time, entire cities became indistinguishable from natural hills. This quiet burial contributed to the mystery surrounding the Harappan world. While later civilizations in South Asia developed their own cultural, religious, and political identities, none retained direct knowledge of the ancient cities that lay beneath their feet. The Rig Veda, one of the earliest Vedic texts, describes riverine landscapes and settlements, but makes no clear reference to the urban centers of the Harappan world. This absence further suggests that by the time Vedic society fully developed, the cities of the Indus had already ceased to function as major population centers. As centuries passed, folklore emerged around some of the ruins. In certain regions, locals associated ancient mounds with figures from mythology or with forgotten kingdoms of vague antiquity. These narratives helped preserve a sense of the site's mystique. Yet they did not preserve factual history. The Harappans themselves remained anonymous, their achievements unrecognized and their symbols misunderstood. The relative silence of the archaeological record during this long period also contributed to the civilization's invisibility. Writers from classical Greece, Rome, China, and the Middle East sometimes mentioned distant lands near the Indian subcontinent. But none described cities resembling Harappa or Mohenjo-daro. The Harappan world, once thriving and internationally connected, lay hidden beneath layers of time. Later travelers and chroniclers who passed near these ancient ruins rarely recognized them as the remains of an advanced urban civilization. For example, when early medieval scholars and geographers wrote about the Indus region, they focused on flourishing towns of their own era, not on the ancient mounds scattered across the landscape. Some medieval cartographers marked mysterious hillocks, but lacked the tools to investigate their origins. Without an understanding of archaeology or stratigraphy, these observers could not distinguish between natural formations and the remains of ancient urban planning. The absence of carved inscriptions or monumental architecture, features that often help preserve memory, played a major role in Harappa's disappearance from history. In civilizations such as Egypt, large-scale stone structures and hieroglyphic inscriptions endure for millennia, preserving the memory of rulers and events. The Harappans, however, built with brick rather than massive stone blocks and focused on functional public works rather than grand monuments. Their script, inscribed on small seals and pottery fragments, did not survive in ways that later cultures could easily interpret. Once the cities were abandoned, these small artifacts were scattered or buried, leaving no lasting monumental narrative. Thus, as the medieval and early modern periods unfolded, the Harappan civilization lived on only through cultural echoes, patterns of settlement, agricultural techniques, and symbolic traditions that persisted in subtle ways. The civilization itself remained lost, its name unspoken and its achievements unknown. For thousands of years, the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro lay hidden in plain sight, massive earthen mounds rising from the plains of Punjab and Sindh, stripped of their bricks and enveloped by layers of soil and mystery. When the modern world finally encountered them, it was not through grand archaeological ambition or deliberate historical inquiry. Instead, the rediscovery of the Indus civilization began almost by accident. Driven by practical needs, colonial infrastructure projects, and the curiosity of a handful of individuals who recognized that the scattered artifacts and strange brick mounds hinted at something far older than anyone had imagined. In the early decades of British rule in India, engineers working for the expanding railway system were tasked with sourcing reliable building materials. Across Punjab, they encountered vast mounds of ancient, uniformly baked bricks, hard, durable, and perfectly suited for railway ballast. Local villagers had long used these bricks for their own construction needs, unaware of their antiquity. A particularly large mound near a small town called Harappa became a convenient quarry for railway contractors. Train tracks for the Lahore-Multan line were laid using thousands of bricks taken from what was then thought to be nothing more than an old, abandoned ruin. This unintentional destruction became the starting point for rediscovery. As bricks were removed, small artifacts began to appear. Workers found terracotta figurines, seals, pottery shards, and beads, objects that looked different from known medieval or ancient Indian materials. These finds reached the notice of antiquarians working with the Archaeological Survey of India. Among them was Alexander Cunningham, considered the father of Indian archaeology. Cunningham visited Harappa and collected several seals bearing strange symbols and animal motifs. He recognized that these seals resembled those found in Mesopotamia, although their script was unlike any known writing system. Unfortunately, during this period, archaeological work was not yet systematic, and the significance of Harappa remained unclear. Cunningham noted the site as unusual features, but lacked the resources and theoretical framework to identify it as part of a vast Bronze Age urban civilization. Decades passed before interest in Harappa grew again. Meanwhile, another mysterious mound lay quietly hundreds of kilometers to the south, Mohenjo-daro. Local residents had long been aware of this elevated landscape of crumbling bricks and scattered artifacts. Travelers occasionally mentioned it, but like Harappa, its origins remained unknown. The name Mohenjo-daro, often interpreted as Mound of the Dead, only added to its aura of legend without revealing its true age. By the early 20th century, the Archaeological Survey of India, under the leadership of Sir John Marshall, began adopting more scientific excavation methods. Marshall, inspired by developments in archaeology elsewhere, believed that India held secrets that could transform global understanding of ancient history. When reports of unusual seals and brick structures from the Indus region reached him, he authorized systematic excavations at both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. The results were astonishing. Excavators uncovered layers upon layers of well-planned streets, brick houses, drainage systems, wells, platforms, workshops, and seals. The urban planning, standardized bricks, and sophisticated sanitation systems revealed a level of complexity not previously associated with South Asia's ancient past. For years, scholars had assumed that advanced urban civilizations of the ancient world were limited to Mesopotamia and Egypt. The discoveries at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro challenged this assumption, expanding the map of early human development. One of the most remarkable findings was the sheer scale of Mohenjo-daro. As excavators worked through its mounds, they uncovered a vast city laid out with careful precision. Residential blocks, bathing areas, public buildings, and extensive drainage networks suggested a civic order that rivaled, and in some aspects surpassed, contemporary civilizations elsewhere. The now famous water tank, often called the Great Bath, stunned researchers with its engineering sophistication. Seals recovered from both sites provided further evidence of the civilization's unique identity. Featuring animal motifs, intricate symbols, and undeciphered script, these seals indicated widespread administrative practices and long-distance trade. Some seals matched those discovered in Mesopotamia, confirming that the Indus people once engaged in international exchange. As the scale of discoveries grew, Marshall realized that he was witnessing the uncovering of a lost civilization, one that predated many known cultures and possessed an urban sophistication unparalleled in South Asia for millennia. In public announcements, he emphasized that these cities were not isolated examples, but part of a larger cultural world stretching across hundreds of kilometers. The realization sparked international excitement. Scholars began comparing the Indus civilization to Egypt and Mesopotamia, identifying it as one of the earliest great urban traditions of human history. Excavations intensified, revealing massive city mounds, intricate water systems, vast residential quarters, and evidence of complex trade networks. At Harappa, workers unearthed monumental structures, including a large, multi-roomed building interpreted variously as a granary, warehouse, or administrative center. They discovered standardized weights, painted pottery, terracotta figurines, and etched beads, all elements that painted a picture of advanced economic organization. Harappa's significance as a major center of the civilization became clear, and the site gave its name to the entire archaeological culture. The Harappan civilization. Mohenjo-daro presented an equally rich archaeological landscape. Excavators identified multiple building phases, each revealing reconstruction and resilience across centuries. The presence of wells in nearly every house impressed Marshall and his colleagues, leading them to marvel at the civilization's emphasis on water hygiene. The city's streets, aligned in careful grids, displayed a level of civic planning unmatched in much of the ancient world. Crucially, the absence of palaces, royal tombs, or inscriptions celebrating rulers puzzled researchers. Where were the kings? Where were the monuments? The discoveries suggested a civilization that organized itself differently from its contemporaries, more egalitarian, more civic-minded, and more focused on functional infrastructure than on grandiose architecture. As excavations progressed, scholars recognized that the Indus civilization extended far beyond these two major cities. Surveys uncovered dozens of sites across Pakistan and India: Dholavira, Lothal, Rakhigarhi, Kalibangan, and many others, each contributing to a broader understanding of the civilization's reach and diversity. The world was beginning to see the full scope of the cultural network that had once flourished across the region. The rediscovery of the Harappan civilization in the colonial era marked only the beginning of a long and evolving journey of investigation. As the 20th century advanced and the 21st century began, scholars equipped with new scientific tools, improved excavation techniques, and interdisciplinary approaches dramatically reshaped our understanding of this ancient world. Modern research did not simply fill in missing details. It challenged old assumptions, corrected earlier errors, and revealed entirely new dimensions of Harappan life, environment, economy, and chronology. In many ways, the Harappan civilization has become more fascinating as new evidence emerges, not less. One of the most transformative developments in archaeological research was the widespread adoption of radiocarbon dating. Early excavations had relied heavily on pottery sequences, assumptions about cultural parallels, and broad comparisons with Egyptian and Mesopotamian chronologies. These methods often placed the Harappan civilization within uncertain or overly narrow timeframes. With radiocarbon dating, however, researchers gained a more accurate and independent means of establishing the ages of organic materials found in excavation layers. Radiocarbon dating revealed that the Harappan civilization was older than previously thought. Instead of emerging abruptly, it developed gradually from earlier cultural phases over several centuries. The early Harappan period began earlier than older estimates suggested, and the mature Harappan phase extended across a substantial span of time. These refined chronologies allowed scholars to understand the civilization as part of a deeper regional evolution rather than a sudden, isolated phenomenon. Another transformative field has been satellite imagery and remote sensing. Early archaeologists could identify sites only through ground surveys, local reports, or visible mounds. Modern technologies, including satellite photography and aerial mapping, have allowed researchers to detect faint traces of ancient settlements, dried-up river channels, and hidden structures beneath fields and deserts. These tools have dramatically expanded the known extent of the Harappan world. One of the most significant contributions of remote sensing has been the mapping of paleo river systems. Satellite images revealed that many Harappan sites once lay along the course of now dry rivers. This evidence helped confirm that the Ghaggar-Hakra system, often associated with the ancient Sarasvati, had been a major waterway during earlier phases of Harappan development. Understanding the evolution of this river system provided critical clues for explaining shifts in population, changes in agricultural strategies, and the eventual decline of some urban centers. Paleo-environmental studies further enriched this picture. By analyzing ancient sediments, pollen grains, microfossils, and mineral patterns, scientists reconstructed the climate and environmental conditions of the Harappan era. These studies showed that the region experienced significant climatic fluctuations, including a gradual weakening of the monsoon. Instead of sudden collapse events, climate data pointed to long-term environmental stress that likely influenced settlement patterns, agricultural practices, and population movement during the late Harappan phase. Such findings transformed earlier interpretations that had attributed the civilization's decline solely to river shifts or invasions. Modern research demonstrated that the story was more nuanced. A combination of environmental change, social adjustment, and economic transformation shaped the civilization's evolution. This perspective emphasized resilience rather than fragility, highlighting how Harappan communities adapted to challenging conditions over extended periods. Genetic research also contributed new insights, though it remains an evolving field with many debates. Studies using ancient DNA from human remains in South Asia provided early glimpses into population histories that span thousands of years. These genetic patterns suggest that Harappan populations were not isolated. They interacted with groups across the Iranian Plateau and Central Asia while maintaining distinct regional identities. The genetic evidence supports models of long-term mixture and mobility, rather than simple scenarios of invasion or population replacement. Importantly, genetic research helped clarify that South Asian populations today reflect deep, layered ancestries, with Harappan-related lineages forming an essential part of that heritage. This finding countered earlier narratives that had minimized the Harappan contribution to later cultures. Instead, it highlighted that the civilization's legacy survived through its people, who continued to influence cultural and genetic landscapes long after the great cities faded. Advances in zooarchaeology, the study of animal remains, shed new light on Harappan diet, domestication practices, and economic strategies. By examining bones, teeth, and animal residues, researchers identified changes in herding patterns, the spread of domesticated species, and adaptations to environmental stress. These studies revealed, for example, the gradual rise of Zebu cattle prominence in Harappan contexts and provided clues about how pastoral and agrarian practices shifted during the late Harappan period. Archaeobotany, the study of ancient plant remains offered equally transformative insights. Through microfossil analysis and seed identification, scholars reconstructed ancient farming practices with unprecedented detail. They discovered that Harappan agricultural systems were more diverse than older models suggested, including combinations of winter and summer crops, drought-resistant varieties, and complex irrigation strategies. These findings helped explain how Harappan communities supported large cities and adapted to climatic fluctuations. One of the most exciting developments has been isotopic analysis, which examines chemical signatures in human and animal bones, teeth, pottery residues, and metals. Isotope studies can reveal where individuals grew up, what they ate, and how far goods traveled. In the Harappan context, isotopic analysis revealed patterns of mobility within and between regions. For instance, some individuals buried at Harappan sites appear to have originated from distant areas, suggesting migration or marriage exchanges. Similarly, isotopes from cattle remains showed that some animals were herded across considerable distances, underscoring the mobility of pastoral practices. These scientific methods challenged simple interpretations of Harappan society and demonstrated its dynamic, interconnected nature. Instead of viewing the civilization as static or unchanging, modern research revealed constant adaptation, regional diversity, and complex interactions with neighboring worlds. Excavation techniques also evolved significantly in the modern era. Earlier archaeologists often focused on uncovering monumental structures and dramatic artifacts. In contrast, contemporary archaeology emphasizes stratigraphy, microanalysis, and careful documentation. This shift allowed researchers to reconstruct daily life, understanding not only elite activities, but also the habits of ordinary households. New excavations at Rediscovery, for example, revealed detailed evidence of domestic architecture, craft production, and burial practices. Findings from Dolavira deepened understanding of water management and regional variation. Work at Farmana and other sites in Haryana offered fresh insights into Harappan ritual practices and anthropological profiles. These discoveries continue to refine the picture of Harappan society as diverse, dynamic, and regionally complex. One of the most enduring mysteries, the undeciphered Indus script, remains an active field of study. Scholars have used computational analysis, linguistic modeling, and pattern recognition techniques to explore the script's structure. While decipherment has not yet been achieved, modern methods have clarified the script's internal patterns, symbol frequencies, and likely functions. Evidence suggests that the script was logosyllabic or symbolic rather than alphabetic, used for short administrative or ritual notations rather than long texts. The absence of lengthy inscriptions, combined with the small size of seal impressions, suggests that literacy may have been limited to specific administrative contexts. This informed interpretation contrasts with earlier speculation that the Harappans may have produced long literary or religious texts. Instead, the civilization may have relied on oral traditions for transmitting complex narratives, while written signs served practical purposes. In the modern world, the name Harappa carries a resonance that stretches far beyond archaeology. It evokes a civilization that, for thousands of years, lay forgotten beneath layers of earth, only to re-emerge as one of the earliest and most sophisticated urban cultures known to humanity. Today, Harappa and its sister cities stand at the intersection of scientific inquiry, cultural identity, heritage preservation, and public imagination. They remind us that the story of human civilization is far older, more diverse, and more interconnected than earlier generations ever realized. Yet even as excavations uncover new insights, countless mysteries endure, drawing researchers and the public into continual exploration. One of the most important aspects of Harappa's modern legacy is its role in shaping cultural identity in South Asia. When the civilization was rediscovered, it immediately challenged long-standing assumptions about the region's ancient past. Previously, global narratives of early civilization centered on Egypt and Mesopotamia. The discovery of the Indus cities revealed that South Asia, too, was home to a highly advanced Bronze Age society. This realization reshaped historical timelines and affirmed the antiquity and innovation of the subcontinent's cultures. For people in India and Pakistan, Harappa represents an ancestral heritage shared across modern national borders. The civilization's sites lie today in both countries, and scholars from both regions contribute to its ongoing study. The rediscovery of Harappa became a source of pride and a symbol of deep historical roots that predate later religious, political, and cultural divisions. As a result, Harappa occupies a unique position in national narratives, often presented as a foundational chapter of South Asian civilization. However, this shared heritage also brings challenges. The Indus civilization predates modern national boundaries by several millennia. Yet contemporary political environments sometimes influence how it is interpreted. Scholars work to maintain scientific rigor and cultural sensitivity, ensuring that interpretations remain grounded in evidence rather than ideology. Meanwhile, museums, universities, and heritage organizations aim to present Harappa as a unifying story, one that belongs not to any single community or nation, but to humanity as a whole. Preservation of Harappan archaeological sites has become a major undertaking in the modern era. Sites such as Mohenjo-daro face threats from environmental factors, including rising groundwater levels, salt crystallization, and seasonal flooding. Human activities, such as urban encroachment, inadequate site management, and tourism pressures, also pose risks. Preservation experts from around the world have worked with local authorities to stabilize crumbling walls, control visitor movement, and design conservation strategies that respect both scientific integrity and cultural value. At Harappa, protective measures have helped retain large portions of the site for continued study. The establishment of site museums provides educational opportunities for local communities and international visitors. These museums showcase artifacts, reconstructions, and interpretive displays that bring ancient life to the surface. Through these efforts, Harappa is transformed from an abstract archaeological concept into a tangible and educational experience. Beyond the major cities, hundreds of smaller Harappan sites remain scattered across the landscape. Many lie unexcavated, offering immense potential for future discoveries. Others have been partially explored but still hold secrets within their unstudied layers. The challenge of documenting and preserving this vast archaeological landscape requires cooperation among governments, academic institutions, and local communities. In some regions, agricultural expansion or industrial development threaten sites that have not yet been protected. Archaeologists and heritage advocates work continually to raise awareness and secure funding for conservation initiatives. Modern research methods continue to push the boundaries of knowledge about the Harappan world. Advances in drone mapping, soil chemistry, micro-artifact analysis, ancient DNA sampling, and environmental modeling promise to deepen our understanding of population movement, diet, technology, and climate. These techniques allow researchers to ask new questions that were previously impossible to explore. One major area of ongoing research involves the decipherment of the Harappan script. Despite decades of effort, the script remains one of the world's great undeciphered writing systems. Some scholars believe that breakthroughs may come through advances in artificial intelligence or through new inscriptional finds that provide longer texts or bilingual examples. Until then, the script remains a silent witness to a civilization whose administrative and symbolic systems remain only partially understood. Another enduring question concerns the social and political structure of the Harappan world. Without imposing monuments or royal inscriptions, scholars continue debating how authority was organized. Did the civilization operate through councils, merchant guilds, kinship networks, or decentralized city-states? Was leadership communal or distributed? These questions shape modern interpretations of how complex societies can function without the top-down hierarchical structures familiar from other ancient civilizations. The issue of religion also inspires active inquiry. While earlier interpretations attempted to draw direct lines between Harappan beliefs and later religious traditions, modern scholars emphasize caution. The Harappans left no mythological texts or liturgical inscriptions. Their figurines, seals, and ritual spaces must be interpreted carefully. Yet the potential connections between Harappan symbolism and later South Asian traditions continue to attract both academic and public interest. Whether or not these connections represent direct continuity, they highlight the deep cultural layers that shape the region's spiritual landscape. Environmental studies remain another major field of research. By examining ancient riverbeds, climate fluctuations, and soil chemistry, scientists refine models of how environmental change influenced Harappan cities. These studies often resonate with contemporary concerns about climate resilience, water management, and sustainable urban planning. In many ways, the Harappan experience offers lessons for modern societies facing environmental stress. The civilization's sophisticated water systems, adaptive strategies, and long-term resilience serve as a reminder that ancient knowledge can still inspire modern innovation. The story of Harappa today is also a story about community engagement. Local villagers living near archaeological sites often develop strong relationships with these ancient remains. Some become site guides, museum staff, or excavation workers, passing down stories and knowledge to new generations. Educational programs introduce students to the region's deep history, fostering a sense of pride and stewardship. Such efforts help ensure that Harappa is not viewed solely as an academic subject, but as a living heritage embedded within the cultural identity of local communities. International collaboration has strengthened research and conservation efforts. Scholars from South Asia, Europe, the United States, and other regions work together on interdisciplinary projects. These collaborations bring fresh perspectives and diverse methodologies to long-standing questions. They also help build bridges between academic communities and promote shared commitment to preserving the world's archaeological heritage. Yet, for all the discoveries made, Harappa continues to hold more unanswered questions than answers. Why did the script remain undeciphered despite centuries of innovation? How exactly did the civilization organize governance without monumental kingship? What were the full extent and nature of Harappan religious beliefs? How did ordinary families experience daily life in a city as organized and complex as Mohenjo-daro? And what personal stories might lie buried beneath the layers of earth? Stories of artisans, merchants, farmers, ritual specialists, children, and migrants who shape the civilization's everyday world. These mysteries transform Harappa from a completed chapter of ancient history into a living field of inquiry. Each archaeological season brings new fragments that deepen, complicate, or even overturn earlier interpretations. Harappa continues to evolve in the imagination of researchers, students, and the global public. It remains a reminder that human history is dynamic, full of surprising achievements and remarkable adaptations. The modern significance of Harappa is thus twofold. On one hand, it serves as a symbol of South Asia's ancient ingenuity, urban sophistication, and cultural depth. On the other hand, it stands as a testament to the vast, still unexplored potential of archaeological science. Its mysteries inspire curiosity, its ruins demand preservation, and its legacy continues to shape debates about identity, heritage, and human development. As we conclude this documentary journey through the history of Harappa, from its prehistoric roots to its modern rediscovery and ongoing study, we are left with the understanding that the Indus civilization is not simply a relic of the distant past. It is a reminder of humanity's enduring capacity for innovation, cooperation, adaptation, and resilience. And though many questions remain unanswered, each discovery brings us closer to understanding a civilization that helped shape the course of human history, while leaving behind a legacy that continues to captivate the world.